Chapter 181 Logan moves. After hearing what Peter and Vorden had said, Logan wasn't shocked by it. His mind worked differently to others. It was very rare for him to feel any emotion, such as sadness or shock. It wasn't until he first discovered computers and programming that he started to feel the emotions of joy and excitement. So his reaction to hearing this wasn't normal. To say the least, he felt like he needed more information before coming to a logical conclusion. So far there were 3 students involved, Vorden, Quinn, and Peter that he knew of. The words that stuck out most to him during the conversation were "kill again." Logan then proceeded to log onto his computer and started to access the school servers. Whenever he would hit a firewall or a security breach, he would place his hand on the computer and close his eyes. "Please, I need your help. Will you let me in?" Logan asked. A few moments later, and he was into the school system. Since the new school semester started, there were a total of 2 student deaths that had been reported, one named Brandon and the other named Earl. When looking at the files, he also noticed that 2 students had been brought in for questioning, and one of them for both cases, Quinn. If the 3 of them are friends, are they covering for Peter? Maybe the military was always close in their investigation, but never got the right person. Logan thought. This seemed to be the most logical conclusion, but then there were still a few things that didn't make sense. Why would they be covering for a murderer? They couldn't have been that close, as no one knew each other before coming here. Unless they were directly involved, there would be no need for a cover-up. Then the second thing was the fact, why would there be a need for them to kill again? The way Peter had spoken had made it sound like an accident. The next thing Logan pulled up was a file on Fex, a student name that was mentioned in their conversation. Now things are starting to make less sense. He said. Fex was a new student who had only been here a few days and had been brought in for draft evasion. For some reason, there was a link between all these people, but Logan just couldn't find it. His heart started beating as the excitement of a mystery about to be unlocked. He felt the same feeling he did when he was working on a new idea, and when he finally found the missing component, a rush of dopamine would be sent to his brain. There was one place that they would be at tonight without fail, and that was the student's name's Fex. Before leaving, Fex grabbed a round ball-like object and started making some adjustments with his mechanical glove. Vorden had caught up with Quinn and given him information on his target, saying what homeroom class they were from and also what combat classes they would attend. Judging by the time of day, they were able to guess most likely where the student would be. Quinn had gone to one of the homeroom classes to find his target. Vorden had gone to wait outside the dorm area, and lastly Peter to the canteen. As Quinn walked down the hallway where the students were just outside their homeroom, he would use his inspect skill on all those walking by. Vorden had given a description, but Quinn felt like using his inspect skill would allow him to spot the right person quicker in the crowd of people. As for how to convince the student to come with him, Quinn had wanted to test something. Finally, he found the student walking back towards the dorm room. Quinn quickly tapped the student on his shoulder. "What is it?" The student said, half annoyed as he turned, but he quickly changed his tone. "Oh, sorry, how can I help you?" he said with blush marks underneath his cheeks. He had never seen a student so handsome before. It was as if something was drawing him in. Influence skill activated. Influence skill successful. Before approaching the student, Quinn had asked the system to allow his charm skills to go back to normal. He had increased his points by 2. And out of all the student's regenerative abilities, Quinn was tasked with the second weakest one. "Follow a few feet behind me. Don't say anything to anyone, understand?" The student nodded and continued to follow Quinn. Vorden found it quite easy to convince his student to do as asked after showing him his watch, threatening to beat the person if he didn't comply, and then finally, it was Peter's turn. Dinner had ended, and he could see his target moving up and leaving the place, but he was also with a few of his friends as well. However, Peter managed to pluck up the courage and stand in front of the student. "I'm here to deliver a message," Peter said. "General Duke has asked me to take you to him at this moment." The student agreed to leave his friends and follow Peter. It was all going well for Peter so far. The student was following and asking him what the general wanted to see him about. Whenever asked, Peter would reply, saying the general would never tell a low-level like him information about why. However, the problem started to occur when the student realized that Peter wasn't leading them to an office, but instead towards the dorm rooms. "Where are you taking me?" he asked. "Oh, I just need to grab a few things for my room first that I forgot," Peter replied. "I thought you said it was urgent." The student was now starting to get annoyed at Peter. This was bad, as there were still several students around returning to their dorm rooms after leaving the canteen. It wasn't like Peter could knock him out there and then. "Is there a problem here?" a voice said. As the student turned around, he could see a black-haired student he didn't recognize, and suddenly, his eyes lit up red. "Head over to room 224 and wait there," Fex commanded, and the student did as asked. "Thank you, but why are you out here?" Peter asked. "I had a feeling one of you might mess up this plan of yours, and out of everyone I picked you. I've been following you since the canteen." The two of them entreed Fex's room and tied up the student. They then sat together in silence as they patiently waited for the others. Until Fex broke the silence. "Don't worry too much. Once this is done, you will evolve and no longer be required to do this type of thing. I honestly don't know why your turner didn't prepare this all beforehand." "Well, he didn't really understand what was going on. None of do." Peter replied. "What do you mean?" Fex asked. But before Peter was able to give further details, a knock was heard at the door. Quinn had arrived first, and then Vorden only a few minutes after. They did the same procedure as last time and allowed Fex to tie the other 2 students up. Now laid on the floor were 3 students. "Well, are you ready to do this?" Fex asked. Chapter 182, last one. This time, when faced with the dilemma of choosing who should cut off the student's limbs, Quinn had volunteered. He was taking no chances. He would be doing the work. It wasn't that he wanted to do it. It was because he felt like it was crueler to allow Peter's shaky hands to do the work. If the part wasn't cut clean, it would only cause more suffering. They had decided to do all of the students at once, rather than splitting it up into different days. They wanted to get rid of Peter's problem as soon as possible. If Peter was still hungry and they couldn't find a solution for the last one, then they could always rely on Vorden. Here I go. With a single swing, Quinn cut the piece the student's foot clean off. This time, however, Vorden immediately moved towards the amputated area and started to place his hands just above it. As he did, it began to heal far quicker than it normally would. "What's that?" Peter asked. "I decided to head to the nurse's office, faking that I had a temperature. The two of us touched, so I was able to copy her ability." Vorden explained. "I didn't want these guys to go through the same pain as the others." The healing ability along with the regeneration ability seemed to speed up the process by a great amount, and there wasn't even a lot of mess to clean up this time. They then repeated the process 2 more times to the other students and finally, they were done with everything. Thanks to Vorden's healing ability, the pain the students had suffered didn't weigh on their mind as much this time. Also, when the legs were put in front of Peter, he too was starting to find it a bit easier. In fact, Vorden thought he was finding it too easy. "Looks like you're really enjoying those legs there, huh?" Vorden remarked before asking Peter, "Did mine taste any better?" A crude smile was shown on his face, and his eyebrow was slightly twitching. "Look, I'm not happy about this, but we have to make the best out of the bad situation," Peter said as he took another bite. When eating the legs, it wasn't like he ever felt full. It was a strange feeling, but it was more like his hunger would disappear. He tore through each leg with ease and finally had finished the last one. "Remember to eat the bone too," Fex added. "Don't want to leave any evidence behind." Peter's jaw was now also harder than most, and his whole digestion system had changed. So doing something like this was easy for him. Although the bone didn't have much taste apart from the marrow inside, but at least he didn't churn it up like everything else he ate. 6 out of 7 pieces of human flesh consumed by your ghoul. The message had appeared, and now there was only one person they had to find before Peter had to evolve. Although the others weren't sure about the exact amount, but knew Peter must be close. Before Peter had eaten the pieces of leg, Quinn had also gotten a taste from each one of the students on the floor, adding to his overall stat points. Charm, 13. Strength, 20. Stamina, 18. With the 3 students' blood types, these were the stats that had been increased. "So did you come up with any ideas for this last person?" Fex said as he sat down on his chair with his legs up on his desk. "I was thinking about this, but what about that Bones person?" Peter suggested. "The person who you met today? That's a bad idea," Vorden replied. "Number 1, did you even see that guy? I think you would have to eat his whole body to be satisfied. Secondly, he happens to work for Duke. You're already on his radar. But I think you're along the right line. We should pick someone who deserves it." "And how do we decide that?" Quinn said. "If anyone deserves it, it would be Duke himself. Everyone is just doing what he says." Peter could have easily been doing the same thing to others once he went up high enough up the ladder. Suddenly, while in the middle of their conversation, a beep sound was heard. They all recognized the sound well, for it was when someone was returning to the room who accessed it. However, Fex had sent his 2 roommates away during this time, using his influence skill. He had tested it before and knew their minds were weak and would obey the command, so it shouldn't have worn off. So just who was able to break into the room so suddenly like that? As the door opened, a small student with bags under his eyes were seen. His head quickly moved around the room, trying to process what was going on. 3 students tied up on the floor, blood parts in certain areas, and the rest casually standing around. Logan mumbled to himself. Logan had actually arrived in front of the door earlier, but he had decided to continue to listen in on their conversation. Perhaps he had misheard something, or the words they were saying weren't really meant. But after listening and deluding himself from the truth, he could no longer take it when they started to talk about candidates. He had to see for himself what was going on. The biggest shock to him, though, was one of the students had their limbs torn off. The other 2 had already healed in time, but the same couldn't be said for the last student. They all had different levels of regenerative ability, and his leg would take longer to heal. Logan immediately brought out the black sphere-shaped ball and pressed it against his chest. The small little spider-like robots started to spread and appear around his body at a lightning speed until it formed a mechanical suit. It looked similar to a miniature mech, only less clunky. As he lifted his hand, it started to form an oval cannon-like shape. 2 more of them started to form on top of his shoulders, and then he had his other hand pointed out. Each of them was pointed at a person in the room. "Don't you guys move, or I swear I will blast you all," Logan said. His voice had a slight echo to it, as it was projected through a type of speaker through the suit. "Quinn, did they put you up to this? If they're blackmailing you, I can help you out. I have connections, you know." "Logan, please," Quinn pleaded. "Put the weapons down. It's not what you think." "I can't, Quinn. If I lower these weapons and I don't know the truth, there's a higher chance for you all attacking me. And although I would like to trust you, Quinn, I have factored that there is also a high probability that you are involved in this case as well, and 2 previous cases before." When did he do so much research, Quinn thought. "What the hell are you guys waiting for? Looks like we found your next meal ticket," Fex said as he took a step forward. A few seconds later, though, a beam of blue light had hit Fex and sent him flying up against the room wall. "I did say that nobody should move," Logan said. Chapter 183 Processing. A single step, that was all it took. Fex had moved a single step before Logan had decided to fire without hesitation, and the shot looked powerful. They could tell it was a powerful blow to cause Fex to go flying like that. and it seemed like he hadn't recovered from it, because he was still lying on his front on the ground. When looking at Logan, Quinn could see that he wasn't reacting like he usually would. It was like he was shaken, but not from fear of what was happening. No, Logan was too strong of a person for that. It was something else. There weren't many people Logan had trusted, and although it wasn't a long time the two had spent with each other, it felt more special to Logan. No one had ever shown as much interest in what he had worked on. Quinn would often ask questions about all his gadgets, and although he couldn't appreciate their true worth, he could tell he treated them with great care. But this fact had made him realize that the two of them weren't that close to each other at all. He now felt like Quinn had used him for his skills. Logan, please just give us a chance to explain. At that moment, Quinn had taken a step forward. Logan automatically reacted to this and fired once again. Wait, no, Logan shouted. However, Quinn felt like something like this might have happened, so he was prepared. Suing the shadow, he lifted it up to block the energy shot, stopping it mid-air in the shadow. Then moving out of the way, he moved his shadow with it, causing the shot to smash and go straight out the window. We seriously need to stop wrecking these rooms, Borden said. Quinn, I need an answer for all of this, and one that makes sense. If everything doesn't, and I feel like you're lying, well, I don't want to even consider that as an option. You'll understand when I explain everything. I wanted to tell you, Logan. Do you mind if just me and you speak alone? Quinn asked. As Logan looked around the room, he realized that it would be the better option to just talk to Quinn. It would make it less likely for the others to plan anything while the two of them were talking. But Quinn wanted to talk to Logan alone for a different reason. Right now, he was the only one who knew about the system, and although Fex seemed like he was passed out on the ground, who knew if was listening in or not? Give me your neck, Logan demanded. What, why? Quinn asked. If you want me to trust you, then give me your neck, Logan said once again. Quinn did as asked and walked over while bending down slightly. Then when Logan touched Quinn's neck, a part of his suit started to move and form a type of collar around Quinn's neck. If you try anything funny, that collar will explode, Logan said. Although vampires had great healing abilities, he wasn't so sure he would be able to survive an explosion around the neck. The two of them then left the room and headed upstairs to where Logan's room was located. After a few moments after them leaving, Fex started to get up from the floor, and around his chest area, a burn mark could be seen. Who would have thought that little twip would have been so strong? Fex said as he touched his chest area. It was slowly starting to heal, but wasn't healing as fast as a regular wound, which was a first for Fex. He just wondered what that energy blast was made of. Good thing I stayed on the floor. I was not ready for that one, he said. Do you think Quinn is going to be okay? Peter asked. Logan is a level 8 user. I know Quinn's strong, but we have to deal with this problem first, Borden said, pointing at the students on the floor. Maybe Quinn can buy us some time, but if Logan reports us, they still can't do anything without any proof. So we need to get rid of the evidence as quickly as possible. The three of them nodded and got to work. Quinn and Logan were inside their room, and out of habit Logan had gone to his usual seat when talking to Quinn. All right, Quinn, I thought we had a fair deal before, but it seems you were hiding more from me than I originally thought. And although I have a great interest in the system, I cannot condone someone who goes around killing random people. Quinn was struggling to think about how to explain this to Logan. Not only that, but if he would believe him, and how would he react to the truth? While deep in his thoughts, an unexpected voice in his head was heard. Let him touch you again, the system said. His ability, I think I figured out what it is. If you touch me, then it will allow me to speak to him. Pass over everything I know and explain everything that happened. Although Quinn thought it would be better if he explained it in his own words, at the same time, he felt like Logan might not believe him if he did. But if it came directly from the system, then there was a chance. Logan, if you touch me, then the system will be able to explain everything. It will all make sense. Logan was still in his heavy miniature mech suit, apart from one of his hands that had been used to form a collar around Quinn's neck. While in the suit, he felt safe. I'm putting my trust in you one more time, he said as Quinn went over with his hand held out. When the two of their hands connected, instead of the normal system message, Logan was able to speak clearly to the system. The system was then also able to show images of everything that had happened to Quinn so far, including all of the conversations they had. Usually, a normal human brain wouldn't be able to process all of this information at once, but it was being downloaded into Logan's mind like a hard drive. The system knew this would only work with someone like Logan. Quinn, on the other hand, had no clue what was happening and could just see that Logan was remaining still. Then after a few minutes, Logan let go of Quinn's hand. He then raised it and touched the collar around his neck, removing it, before sitting back down in his chair. What happened? Quinn asked. I understand why you did what you did, Quinn. In fact, if I was in the same situation as you, I don't know how I would be able to handle it. Perhaps I would have chosen to seclude myself even further away from everyone. All the actions you took, I cannot blame you, because in a way it was the only thing you could do. After receiving the information, Logan then tried to put himself in Quinn's shoes. Although some of the things he did were bad, could they be avoided was the big question. This would ultimately make up Logan's mind whenever or not Quinn was a bad person. After running multiple different scenarios in his head, he had found a couple of ways where he would have been able to have come out or done better, but Quinn had never made a truly misguided decision. And even though he was thinking of a way to turn Peter back to normal without hurting anyone, it made him happy to find out that Quinn's character and person were still the same he thought it was. Still, what made him even happier was he was able to find out more details of the system. How was it possible that someone in this era could create an AI so complex? The AI itself reminded Logan of his one ability. The two of them sat there for a while. Logan continued to think of all the things he had learned today. The fact that vampires were real didn't interest as much as the system part, but now that the two of them were linked, he wanted to know more about them as well. Quinn had remained quiet, unsure how Logan had taken everything he had just learned, and then Logan suddenly took off the suit, and it formed the original small black ball he had in his hand before. You know, Logan said, I can help you with your problem. Problem? Getting the human flesh. There is a way, Logan replied. Chapter 184 Dark Marketplace. The three boys had worked fast this time, and because they were in a rush, even Fex had to help beyond his determined contribution, an unusual trait of the young man for the reason that he was afraid of getting caught. Rather than simply using his influence skill to clear their minds, he also commanded them to follow him. Then, whenever they arrived at a safe place or a random hall, he would break the skill, allowing their minds to be cleared. It also returned them to normal, as if nothing had ever happened. The group did the very same thing to all three students, and they were all fully healed as normal. What are we going to do about the window? Peter asked. Don't worry, I can deal with that. I will just make the other two students in the room think that they were in a fight. They can just take the blame, Fex said. Although Fex was growing a bit tired since he had used his influence skill a lot today, taking up his mental energy, he merely held out to achieve their goal. However, he would need a good rest after everything was over and done with. Should we go check up on Quinn? Peter asked. You two can go, but I don't want to get blasted again, Fex said as he looked down, noticing that his wound had finally healed. Just then, the beep sound of the door was heard. Knowing that it wasn't going to be Fex's roommates, everybody prepared themselves for the worst to come. Nevertheless, when they saw Logan enter the room with Quinn trailing him, they were able to relax a little. There were no teachers, and Logan no longer looked frightening without him donning the mech suit. It's okay, guys. Logan knows everything, Quinn said. Everything? Peter asked. They thought that Quinn had lied, perhaps, or had only told the truth about Peter. But in reality, Logan knew more than everyone in the room. For Logan now knew about the system as well as the vampires. Logan then pointed at Peter, and as he spoke to each person, he would move along to the next. Yes, I know that you are a ghoul, Logan said, pointing. You are a vampire like Quinn. Also, you're a strange person who seems to be wrapped up in this, more so than you should be. My conclusion is that you are crazy. Peter looked towards Vorden and could see his eyebrow was twitching up and down. If there was one word that Vorden didn't like, it was the word crazy. Anyway, I propose we all head upstairs to my room, for I have a solution to your little eater problem. Follow me. Logan left the room and Quinn followed behind, while signaling to the others that it was all right to do so. You guys can go ahead without me, Fex said. I've done my part, so there are no more favors in between us. I did my thing, and you did your thing. As the others left the room, Fex was finally able to lie down on his bed. The wound and the strain from the multiple uses of influence skill had drained all his energy. He didn't follow them because he didn't want to seem weak in front of the others, afraid that they might use it as a chance to get rid of him. I'll just go ahead and close my eyes, Fex said as he nearly instantly went to sleep. The boys, except for Fex, had finally made it into Logan's room and made sure that the door was firmly shut behind them. Are you sure this isn't all a trap, Quinn? How is this guy meant to help us? Logan whispered. I don't know, Quinn replied. He hasn't told me anything yet, but I trust him. He helped me out with the watch and knew about my shadow abilities, yet still didn't tell anyone. I see no reason for him to tell others about this as well. Logan then logged into his computer as usual. From the surface of the computer screen, a light shone out and a projection appeared, allowing the others to see everything that Logan was doing. The problem is that you need a fresh piece of human meat, correct? But the human meat shouldn't be rotten, so going to the cemetery is not an option. You also couldn't sneak into the hospital due to the surveillance cameras, Logan explained. He then went on to a certain site. It looked exactly like the marketplace that Quinn had gone on to buy his equipment, only this was slightly different. Instead of a white background on the webpage, it was black. I will introduce you to a whole new world you probably didn't even know existed, said Logan. We call this the Dark Marketplace. It contains items that aren't allowed to be sold on the regular marketplace. It even has a request board, one that can evade the eyes of the government. What kind of things are on there? Peter asked. Sometimes, they will ask someone to steal information from their competitors. Some jobs even include hiring assassins to hit on certain people all around the world. Usually, if there is something that you want to get, you can find it here, said Logan. I've heard of this before, Vorden said, but I had no clue how to access it. It seems like only certain people within a group know how to. My family said they would let me know once I am old enough. That's because the Dark Marketplace only allows certain individuals to get a membership. However, my ability allows me to bypass any restrictions, and I am able to log in with no worries. Logan then typed into the search bar, and straight away, what they were looking for appeared. The words could clearly be seen: fresh human flesh available, now cut less than 24 hours ago. Seeing this scared the others a little. They were still young and naive. They knew the world had taken a turn for the worse, yet this seemed like a few steps too far. But even in the past, in the old age of the internet, there was a similar service like this called the dark web. Seeing this, Quinn started to read the description and found something strange. The item has been shrunk, wrapped, and filled with nitrogen to keep it as fresh as possible. It had also been dried of all blood, so the customer can only get the flesh itself. Logan, could you check for me? Is there any way to get blood? Quinn asked. The others thought that Quinn perhaps didn't want to rely on Layla or Vorden any longer. If he could get an endless supply online, that would be a big help for him. However, Quinn was actually hoping for a shortcut. but seeing the fact that the human flesh had been dried of blood made him feel a little suspicious on the ensuing transaction. Logan did a quick type, and to his surprise, the screen said, "No results found." This was the dark marketplace. As long as there was a demand for something, then they would have it. Yet this time, they didn't have blood? It was certainly strange. I find it odd that there wouldn't be blood on this. Regardless, even before vampires began to exist, there are underground hospitals and groups who would need it for emergency situations. Perhaps I should look into this more. Logan continued to ponder on the subject. "So, are we able to order the flesh then?" Peter asked. "Ah yes, I'll do that for you now," Logan replied. The flesh cost quite a sum. It was around 10,000 credits, the same price as an advanced tier beast core. However, Logan had covered the cost of the flesh for them. He stated that he would much rather let himself do this than allowing them to go around the school, trying to cut someone's limb off. Although this was bad in its own way, the flesh already existed on the marketplace. The person was dead, and there was nothing they could do. Once he placed the order online, just like the marketplace, he had received a code. When the confirmation was sent, he was ready to receive his package. In his own room, Logan had a teleporter receiver for packages. He often ordered things online and on the dark marketplace for parts for his gadgets. After typing the code in, the item suddenly appeared in a box. They opened it up, and it was shrunk, wrapped, and covered with ice, just like the order had said. Quinn used his inspect skill. Thereafter, the description stated that there wasn't a single part of it which had blood on them. After taking it out, they placed the meat on Peter's hands, and Logan couldn't stop staring at him. He was interested in seeing how Peter was able to eat the meat. Although Peter was a little shy, he quickly gobbled up the food quickly. When he saw that it was similar to an animal eating meat, Logan lost his interest once again. 7/7 different piece of human flesh have been consumed by your ghoul. Quest complete. Evolution process will begin. Chapter 185 Peter evolving. Almost at the same time as Quinn had received the notification from the system, a loud groan could be heard from behind him. "Peter, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Borden said, with a worried expression. He was shaking Peter, who had fallen and was lying on the ground. Peter was clutching his belly with both hands. He felt like a fire was spreading out from that point all over his body. "Guys, give him some space," Quinn said. "He's evolving. I don't know what he'll turn into, or what's going to happen to him next." Quinn knew from his own experience how painful the process of evolving was, but more than that, he was worried what Peter might turn into. Quinn had immediately asked the system what Peter would evolve into, but the response he received worried him. The system said that there were many possibilities, and it couldn't predict which one Peter would evolve into. He had thought that by completing his quest and letting Peter evolve, it would be the end of his problems, but once again, the system had kept some information from him. When lower-class creatures like ghouls evolved, there were many different classes they could change into. Sometimes, by using certain methods, the classes someone would evolve into could be influenced, but mostly it was a random process which depended on the situation and personality of the individual. Every class had its own set of skills, and some were rarer than others. But when Quinn found out about a specific class a ghoul could evolve into, he became very upset. It was the class known as the Wendigo. Out of all the classes Peter could evolve into, this was the worst. It was the only class that would still require him to eat human flesh, but that was not the only issue with the class. The system had added that because they managed to feed Peter quickly, it wasn't likely he would turn into a Wendigo, but there were no guarantees. All of them stepped back to give Peter some space. Logan turned his spider bots into a cannon attached to his arm and aimed it at Peter. He hadn't covered his whole body this time, but just enough to create the cannon. Logan looked at the others with a determined look on his face. "I'm not taking any chances," Logan said. "There are too many things left in this world that I still need to discover and investigate." Borden totally agreed with him and thought his actions were very reasonable. He was glad Logan had something to point at Peter because he only had the healing ability right now, and that wasn't any help if things went wrong with the evolution. The groans coming from Peter were getting louder, and he started to shake all over. This much pain he had never experienced before. It felt like something was trying to break all the bones in his body. As they nervously watched Peter, they started to see visible changes to his body. His skin began to shrink and tighten, and turning white all over. He didn't look sick or weak. The scene actually reminded Borden of what Quinn had looked like before his evolution into a full vampire. It looked like Peter's body hadn't lost any body mass, but it looked like he was shriveling up and was dehydrated. "Hey, he's not turning into a Wendigo, is he?" Quinn asked the system. Don't know for sure, but you should be prepared for the worst. I'll be honest with you. These are the signs of someone turning into one. If that's the case, I think it would be best to allow Logan to just kill Peter," the system replied. "But I thought you said it was impossible for me to kill Peter? Also, why can't we just feed him again till he evolves, like last time?" Quinn asked, with a mix of fear and hope in his voice. "For your first question, as long as it is someone else who is going to kill Peter, and you don't try to abandon him at that moment, anyone can kill him. Secondly, unlike other classes, Wendigos can't evolve anymore, and unlike a ghoul, they aren't loyal to their master at all. They have lost their intelligence entirely, and can only react based on instinct. They have only one thing on their mind, which is food. The only bit of loyalty they have left is that they won't attack their master, but for the rest of their undead lives they will continue to hunt and kill humans to eat their flesh," the system replied, dashing Quinn's hope. Quinn didn't like the idea of it, but if Peter turned into a Wendigo, he had no other choice. Too many people had already gotten hurt. He had felt guilty about Peter's situation, which was why he was doing his best to help him, but this was a cost that would be too high even for him. At the same time, there was something that was worrying Peter a lot more right now. His heartbeat was starting to slow down. With the pain on top of this, he thought perhaps he was dying. However, even though his heart wasn't beating anymore, he could still feel everything, and it didn't feel like he was dead at all. Then finally, his heartbeat had stopped entirely, and at the same time, so did the pain. Congratulations, your ghoul has successfully evolved into a white blood ritual skill has evolved. 1/3 slots remaining for the cursed family. As Peter stood up from the floor, his face looked more sunken in than before, and his skin was slightly paler. Immediately Peter grabbed his chest for some reason, and he held it there for a while. Yet there was nothing, not a single beat was felt. Tell us your name, age, and where you are, Logan shouted. He had to make sure that Peter was right in the head. I don't answer to you, Peter snapped. I will only answer to one, he said, pointing at Quinn. Quinn then repeated the question again. Peter Chuck, 16, and we are inside Logan's room, sir. Satisfied with the answers, Logan put his hand down, but also made sure not to take the mechanical weapon. Inspect. Name, Peter Chuck. Race, white. Stats, will corresponding with creator until it reaches its limit. Seeing the last bit of information had given Quinn a surprise. This meant right now that Peter had the same stat points as Quinn. He was just as strong and just as fast. Although the second part would suggest it would continue to increase as long as Quinn got stronger, but at some point, it would reach a cap. What is a white though? Was it bad like the Wendigo, or one of the better ones? Quinn asked. Why don't you use your inspect skill and see? The system replied. If you select the race option with your mind, it should pull up more information. Race, white. An undead creature which is fast and sneaky in the night. They are best used as a form of an assassin. Whites have a high level of intelligence similar to humans, although their personality could not be said to be the same. They are lawful to their creator, but once they see someone as their enemy, they will do everything in their power to get rid of them. Whites are immune to poison, sleep, paralysis, mind control, and diseases. They also contain a skill that will allow them to turn a killed victim into another lesser, white, 0/2. Borden could see Quinn taking in something. He noticed he did this from time to time, and then would eventually explain what was going on. Perhaps it was some sort of vampire skill or something. But it did make him wonder where he got all his vampire knowledge from. He had always assumed that it was Layla the vampire frack feeding him this information. Is everything okay? Do we still need to feed him human flesh? Borden asked. It's all right, Peter, you are no longer a ghoul. You're now something known as a white. Quinn replied. After explaining everything to Peter, he finally understood why his heart had stopped beating. He was an undead creature, no longer alive. Can I die, sir? Peter asked. Quinn found it strange that Peter kept referring him to sir, but could only assume it had something to do with his class change. It seemed to also cause a slight personality change in Peter as well. Well, you're already dead. There is no longer any need for you to eat human flesh, and your unnatural healing abilities will heal you most of the time. But if you do get to hurt and you use too much energy, you will once again have to eat human flesh, although there is no longer any requirement for it to be fresh. Quinn explained as the system continued to inform him. Everyone in the room could finally relax and sit down. It was finally all over. Still, Peter had decided to leave the personality change that the system said a white would have. Since it seemed like Peter was being lawful to his creator like it said it would, it most likely meant the second part was genuine as well. If a white saw anyone as its enemy, then he would do everything he could to get rid of the person. As long as no one tried messing with him for now, everything should be okay. But there was one upcoming situation left that they had to deal with that was worrying him about this. His next meeting with Duke in a few days' time. Chapter 186 Breaking Free. I have a question, Borden said. How did you figure out what we were up to? Borden was sure he had covered all their tracks with Fex. The last thing he wanted to do was get caught, yet they did. If they had slipped up somewhere and Fex was able to find out, then this meant others could find out about what happened to them as well. Logan then walked over to Peter, who turned his head and gave him a dead-eye stare. Seeing this, Quinn immediately intervened. Peter, stop that. It was almost like an instinct for Quinn to do this, like he was telling off a bad dog growling at another person. The wristwatch had been removed, and Logan made a few adjustments using his glove before handing it back to Peter to put back on. For now, he had removed the listening device implanted. That's when he noticed that the heartbeat sensor inside hadn't indicated a signal in a while. If he had found this out too late, the guards would have rushed over. Although he didn't know why, he could only assume it had something to do with the Evolutio. He decided to also make a fake signal so it would indicate that Peter was alive. Peter had become a lot less talkative, and at the same time, it seemed like he wasn't as timid before. It was causing a strange atmosphere in the room. Peter, why don't you come over by me? Quinn said, noticing how everyone was feeling. Peter then walked over to where Quinn was, while constantly looking around the room, as if he was watching out for any dangers. I planted a listening device into Peter's wristwatch when you asked me to make adjustments. I felt like you were hiding something. So this was the best cause of action. Hearing this news, Quinn felt like he had no right to be upset with Logan. He really was hiding things from him, and even now Quinn still hadn't told him a few things. It's okay. Logan, are we still friends? Quinn asked. We're friends. Logan replied with an odd look on his face. Of course, friends help each other out, and you've helped me more than ever. Quinn explained. Well, if that's the case, this seems to be a one-way friendship since you haven't helped out with anything at all yet. Logan replied. Although Logan sounded rude, he wasn't. Logan had always been honest like this, and didn't really know about human feelings. As the three were leaving the room, Quinn stopped by the door and pointed at the briefcase he had looked at before with Logan. "You're right," Quinn said. "I really haven't helped you when you helped me so much. You know that briefcase from before? Well, my system says it was made by Richard Eno." With that piece of information, Logan's thoughts were confirmed. He knew it. "You are my friend Quinn," Logan shouted as the door shut. The biggest worry looming over their heads had finally disappeared, but that didn't mean they were completely in the clear. While Vorden and Peter had decided to go back to tier rooms, Quinn decided he would go pay the girls a visit and update them on the situation. They knew what they were planning to do today. Although Lila was happy to help, Aaron didn't want to be anywhere near Fex, and Vorden strongly agreed to this as well. So Layla and Aaron had agreed to stay out of it for the most part and allowed the others to help Peter out. Boys weren't allowed in girls' dorm rooms, and although they usually weren't very strict on this rule, it was currently night time, and it would be curfew time, so Quinn was more worried if anyone were to see him. After a knock on the door, he spoke through the door to confirm it was him and the three of them, then went for a walk down the hallway while Quinn explained everything that happened. "So he won't have to eat humans anymore, and there is no need to get involved with that Fex kid again?" "Good," Aaron said. After hearing everything that happened, it seemed like they were able to solve Peter's problem with ease, and thanks to the dark marketplace, if another ghoul was created, they would be able to solve the problem a lot easier. "Should I experiment with myself first before telling the others?" Layla thought. "Just maybe. If I get strong enough, I can break free." Still, after Quinn had told them everything, Layla could tell that something else was on his mind. "What's wrong? Is there another problem?" she asked. Quinn then proceeded to tell them the situation with Duke, how they desperately wanted Peter to learn the level 4 Earth ability by the end of the week. The major problem was Peter didn't have an Earth ability, and he was too involved to cut ties. "Wait, did you say the end of this week, this Sunday?" Layla asked. "Yeah, that's what Peter told us," Quinn replied. Layla was visibly shaken after she heard this news, but she forced her facial expression to remain neutral. The message she had received from one of the pure agents was True Dream would be coming at the end of the week. On the same day, they wanted Peter to learn the ability by. If the others found out True Dream was coming over, they wouldn't find it a big deal, for he had close ties to the military and would often visit the military bases. But Layla knew the truth. One of Pure Group's biggest targets was True Dream. He was the whole reason why the military was able to keep such a strong grip on everyone. The reason why he was coming, of course, was to take students' abilities, form them, to add them to his own men. And Peter had been selected as one of the targets. After finishing their talk, the group decided to leave each other and head for their rooms for the night. When Quinn opened the door, he was surprised to see Vorden rushing over to him. "Quinn, thank heavens you're back," Vorden said. "Peter, he's become a weirdo. He's just standing above his head and won't listen to anything I say. I was trying to relax, listen to some music, but I can't with him just standing there staring. What the hell happened to him?" Quinn started to laugh nervously. It looked like Peter had changed more than he thought. "Peter, you can rest. Why don't you lie on the bed?" Peter Diaz asked, but when lying on the bed they noticed he didn't close his eyes. "System, what's up with him?" Quinn asked. "Don't worry, he just recently changed. You have to think of him as a newborn person. He will soon start to do things on his own more often, but now that he is an undead, he will no longer requires any sleep," the system replied. Seeing this made Quinn a little upset. The old fragile scared Peter had completely disappeared and was no longer there. Even though Quinn had saved him, had he really? It seemed like Peter was now an entirely different person and he didn't even know who he was looking at anymore. Inside the girls' room, Layla herself was having trouble sleeping. There was 3 days before True Dream would arrive on campus, which meant she had 3 days to try figure out a way how to tell the others what was going to happen to Peter without revealing who she really was. Chapter 187, Feeling Useless. The morning sun had finally risen. A few people around the school had struggled to sleep through the night, and Layla was one of them. Throughout the whole night, she had been pondering how to inform the others. She had already made up her mind that she needed to warn them, but couldn't figure out how. She didn't want to imagine what would happen when True Dream found out that Peter had no ability that could be taken. She was aware of his intentions. From what the boys and Pure had told her, Layla had accurately deduced the specifics of Duke's plan. Every term, True Dream would visit a different military base. However, it turned out that he visited a particular one more often than the others, and that was military base 2. This was the reason why Layla had been sent to this place. Something strange was going on with military base 2. They hadn't been able to figure out what yet, because so far every agent they sent had disappeared. Thus, they decided to do things differently this time. So instead of sending a grown-up, they decided to send an agent, who was at the age of the draft, in as a student. The reason for True Dream's visit was to acquire different abilities from students. Every time that True Dream used his ability, it would also increase his ability level along with it. His skill bypassed almost all the information that they had about mutant cells. After taking someone's ability away, he could then implant the ability into a new person. Their body would automatically get the same ability level as the one that was taken. Nevertheless, they would still need to take the time to get familiar with the ability and learn all the skills. This was why they were offering Peter a lot of ability books, and it also explained why they were hurrying him to get his ability to level 4. There were always certain criteria when it came to choosing which students to use for this. The first and most important criterion was, they should never hail from an original family. Although True Dream's family was one of the Big Four, usually other originals were also part of the Big Four, or under the banner of one. So this criterion was added to avoid a war between the Big Four. They needed students who wouldn't stand out, so that people wouldn't really notice or care if they were to go missing. As such, another one of the criterion was, the student had to come from a poor family, ones with no backing or support. Quinn was still safe because the school believed that at present he had no ability, but both Layla and Peter's abilities were documented, and both of them fulfilled the criteria. It was different for them. There was a possibility that along with Peter, Layla was also a target. Layla had entered the school using false documents. Her family wasn't prominent, but she didn't mind if she was to lose her ability. She had only obtained it for the mission in the first place. The only thing that she didn't want was to end up like Peter and be the military's lapdog. She needed an outside position where she could observe everything that was happening without getting involved. With all things said, she didn't have to warn them about what could happen, but Layla wanted to. The question left was, how should she go about explaining what she had discovered? The morning combat classes had started and Layla had wanted to team up with Quinn, hoping she would be able to get a hint on what they were planning with Peter. Unfortunately, before she could even reach Quinn, he had already gone off to Fex. Although the two of them didn't talk much, she could see that Quinn was enjoying himself while practicing with Fex. Perhaps it was because they were both the same race or had something else in common. She could tell a real friendship was beginning to develop. I hope I will have something like that. It all seems so real instead of this fakeness. Layla thought as she looked at her own disposition. What are you daydreaming about? Aaron shouted. I can't believe we have to continue practicing these stupid leg techniques. This is the beast weapons class, not the martial arts class. And Leo said he wouldn't move on until he was satisfied with the performance of every single one of us, she complained, with a slight look of frustration on her face. The two girls continued to train together using the leg techniques, but a slip in Layla's concentration caused her to drop her guard. She wasn't able to lift her knee in time, like how she usually would during practice, and instead, Layla took a full-blown kick from Aaron to her side. Ouch, Layla said, as she dropped on the floor while gripping her side. What's wrong? We have practiced that kick so many times, I was sure you would be able to block something like that. Aaron said as she walked over and offered her hand to her fallen comrade. Layla lifted her hand to grab Aaron's, but the pain on her side hurt even more. Furthermore, she noticed a stinging pain arise every time she breathed. What the hell? I knew your sword skills were monstrous, but where did you get such strength in your kicks? I think you broke one of my ribs. Would you stop complaining? Aaron said as she knelt down and placed her hand on her friend's side. She then activated her ice ability, ever so slightly, causing the muscles around that area to become numb from the cold, and also taking the pain away. Can someone call the guard and take her to the doctor's office? Leo said. Aaron then lifted Layla up from the ground, allowing her to use her shoulder for support. Don't worry, I will take her. Besides, she needs to walk a little bit on her own. It will only make her stronger, Aaron said. The two girls then started to leave the room together. As they were walking, Layla couldn't help but feel useless and pathetic. Other than a blood bank for Quinn, what use did Layla really have? She hadn't even been helpful in the fight with the Dowkey. If it wasn't for Aaron, the two of them would have been dead back then. And Vorden, although a bit messed up in the head, was very powerful. The only one who was even more worthless than her was Peter, and that wasn't much of an achievement. Would you please stop crying? I didn't mean to hit you that hard. You usually block something like that, Aaron said, in an attempt to comfort Layla. Layla didn't even notice, since her thoughts were so muddled that tears were now slowly descending from her eyes. She wiped them away and simply put on a brave smile. Oh, it's not that. I was just thinking about how useless I am to the team whenever we're in a fight, Layla said. Well, you're not wrong about that, Aaron replied, not realizing how harsh she sounded. Although Aaron was right, it still hurt Layla to hear it straight from her mouth. But you help in other ways. You were the one who thought about that blood bowl, remember? I can't say much, but honestly, if you weren't there to hold me back sometimes, I would have already shoved a few spikes up the boys' backsides. Layla laughed. Aaron, this is kind of a strange question to ask, but are we friends? Well, I don't carry everyone I hurt out of the room. Although Aaron didn't say it, Layla knew her well enough to know what she was like by now. Back at the training hall, the lesson had just finished for the day. Quinn had managed to work up quite a sweat all the while going up against Fex. Truth to be told, Fex was the only person in the room who he could go against while merely using a fraction of his power, outside of Leo of course. When practicing with Layla and Aaron, he would always have to hold back his power slightly, but with Fex, it was different. Now that the lesson was over for the day, students were free to do what they wanted. That's the moment when Quinn noticed Fex, who was looking around the room oddly, and was kicking the floor about, until he eventually started to speak up. Hey, I know this is kind of strange to ask after everything that happened between us, but what are you planning to do after this? Fex asked. Lately, whenever Fex would try to approach people, they would turn away as soon as they saw his watch. It was a strange reaction, but he had finally understood the matter when he saw the mistreatment going on around the school. This caused him to be quite an outcast, yet that wasn't the only problem. He was also incredibly bored. With no one to really talk to, and nothing to explore, he started to look forward to the training sessions with Quinn. Me, I was actually planning to go to the VR gaming room. Quinn replied. VR gaming room, what's that? Fex asked, with a little bit of excitement in his eyes. I can show you if you want. You want to come along? Well, I mean, if you really want me to come that bad, sure, Fex replied, his anticipation clearly showing through his faux-shy demeanor. Chapter 188 The Starter Ring. The two boys had finished their combat classes for the day and decided that they would head to the VR room together. Fex was standing casually outside in the sun, and Quinn could see it didn't affect him at all. while Quinn had to prepare his trusty umbrella and prop it up before stepping into the sun. It was a strange action, but not too strange that it gathered the attention of others. Earth had gotten hotter over the years, and there were quite a few people who wished to protect their skin with the use of UV umbrellas, and on a hot day like today, no one would bat an eye at what Quinn was doing. Seeing this, Fex looked at Quinn oddly. He had only seen a vampire use such things in really old books. He couldn't help but giggle at the thought that Quinn looked like an old man. "What are you doing with that old thing?" Fex asked. "Do you not have a ring?" He lifted his hand, showing the small ring. Quinn was now close enough to see that it really did look like the one in his shop. After using his inspect skill, it confirmed the fact that it was the very same ring. Quinn didn't know how to reply to Fex. The system had informed him that one of these rings were the basics of vampires, and it seemed like if he was to come up with something it would reveal him even sooner. But while Quinn was trying to come up with a lie, Fex was the one who once again came up with his own explanation. "Oh, I see now," Fex said. "You really are one of those vampires raised here on Earth, aren't you? Trained to blend in and report back. I guess that's why you didn't go through the formal initiation and don't have one of these." When Fex said those words, something had caught his attention. The fact that Fex said one of the vampires on Earth. Did this mean other vampires came from another planet? Were vampires a type of alien too? "System, do you have an answer for this?" Quinn asked. "I'm afraid I'm just as confused as you are. As far as I know, vampires have always existed on Earth alongside the humans. Although, I'm afraid I don't know how much time has passed since your family has had the book, so a lot could have changed by then," the system replied. Looking at Fex, it seemed he was showing off his ring quite proudly, and that's when Quinn remembered the requirements to get the ring. It was to kill 10 death bats, an advanced type creature. This brought back memories for Quinn on how hard it was for him to defeat an intermediate creature. He couldn't imagine how hard an advanced tier creature was, and the many more classes above them. "Was the initiation hard?" Quinn asked. Fex started to laugh nervously at this question. "Was it hard? Of course it was hard. Yet I was one of the youngest vampires to ever complete it." As he said this, he lifted his chest up a bit to make himself feel a little bigger. The vampire continued. "You see, the initiation is getting the materials for the ring itself. A young vampire must go out and slay 10 death bats. Once you earn this ring, you are no longer required to go through regular school training with all the rest. But it seems I just jumped from one training pool into another." Fex finished, a little depressed. Although Quinn didn't know why, he could tell Fex was slightly nervous when answering the question. It helped that he was the type that were easy to read what they were feeling because they didn't hide the emotions on their face at all. However, this conversation reminded Quinn about how he had to be cautious around Fex. Although the two of them seemed to be on friendly terms, he still couldn't trust him and didn't know what his goal here at the school was. The fact that he managed to kill 10 advanced tier beasts was a big reminder in the difference between the two of their strengths. As they continued to walk to the VR center, Fex looked at his ring and felt a little guilty. He had lied to Quinn just now. He hadn't earned the ring like he said he did. Fex was hoping to become one of the youngest vampires to ever complete the initiation. He had gone out and traveled and fought against the death bat, but after a gruesome fight and near-death experience with one, Fex only just managed to come out on top. He thought with him being the top of his class he was ready, but it seemed like it wasn't the case. He was embarrassed though, for before he had left his school classes, he had told everyone how easy it would be for him to achieve such a task. If they were to find out he only managed to defeat one before giving up, he would become a laughingstock. So, in turn, he decided to go onto the marketplace and hire some travelers to hunt the beasts for him. With this, he managed to gather most of the crystals needed to make the ring, but his last traveler that accepted the contract never replied. In the end, it was all thanks to the Blood Evolve who placed the crystal on the marketplace that he was able to craft the ring. They had finally arrived at the VR room, and it was a sight that Fex had never seen before, although he wasn't amazed because it just looked like a room full of sleeping capsules. Judging by his reaction, Quinn could tell Fex had no idea what these were. "Don't worry, I was confused when I came here for the first time as well. Just follow me, and I'll let you know about the basics," Quinn said. They went to the counter, and Quinn paid for both him and Fex to play in the capsules for a few hours. Quinn still had plenty of money left from the crystals he had sold earlier. On top of that, he also still had 9 crystals that hadn't been used to create the suit that he could also sell from the last outing. "Hey, I have my own money, you know. You didn't have to pay for me?" Fex said, displaying his golden card. "Don't worry," Quinn said, gritting his teeth, not realizing his mistakes. If he knew Fex had money, he wouldn't have paid for him. He wasn't some charity, and right now he wanted to save up every credit he had. It was only with the goal of finding out more about vampires that Quinn was being so nice to him. He didn't think vampires would have much money. After all, how would they obtain such a thing when they were hiding all the time? Instead, it seemed like Fex was some spoiled rich kid if he was waving the gold card around like that. Unlike Vorden, who also had a gold card, but didn't have much money in it to begin with. Quinn proceeded to show how to operate the machine and such before getting in. He then took note of his capsule number, so it was easier for him to add him to his friends list. They both got into the pods and logged into the game. Fex's whole mind was then transported to the large, empty white lobby space. "Wow, what is this?" Fex said. "Was I teleported somewhere? And oh, it can't be, it feels a little strange." From what Quinn said, only my mind is being used to control this. "Wow, this is amazing. I wonder why the other vampires don't use this." Just as Fex was in deep thought thinking about it, he had received a friend request. User ID Blood Evolver would like to add you. Chapter 189, Returning the Favor. Fex carefully looked at each letter of the word in front of him, one by one. He needed to make sure what he was seeing was real. Blood Evolver. No, it can't be, Fex thought. While looking at the name, he realized that it was the same user ID that was also used in the marketplace when he had bought the Beast Crystal. However, it was quite common for people to use the same user IDs when logging into different websites and games. And what were the chances of someone else having the same user ID and also being a vampire? Fex had found it strange in the first place that someone had been selling the crystal. The planet where the death bats were populated on wasn't a place where travelers would go to often. It was one of the reasons why the vampires had decided to use it as their training ground, on top of the fact that their crystals could be used to create the ring. When Fex first saw the crystal, he thought maybe someone had killed a bat along the way and didn't know what to do with it, and chose to sell it after finding out it could only be used to create a silly ring. After all, it had no effect on humans, not even a little buff in strength. But now thinking about it more, all sorts of questions started running through his head. If Quinn really was the same person, what was he doing on that planet, and how did he get a death bat crystal? Fex knew his strength, and he wasn't strong enough to beat one. And even if he was, why wouldn't he keep the crystal for himself and make a ring of his own instead of seeing that silly umbrella? As of now, nothing was making sense in his head, and thinking about it was starting to make it hurt. He accepted the friend request, and immediately Quinn was transported to the same white space that Fex was in as well. Foxy Fex, Quinn said, looking at his username. What, you don't like it? Fex said, better than Blood Evolver. What are you trying to do? Tell everyone out there you're a vampire. Quinn laughed nervously back. I thought it would be vague enough. Plus who else but other vampires would think that, Quinn replied. This was the confirmation Fex needed. No other vampire out there would be silly enough to have a name such as Blood Evolver. The name was a little bit childish and Quinn kind of fit that image. A naive young vampire. Although Fex couldn't talk much himself. Though this only added to the mystery of Quinn for Fex. Still, it didn't change the fact that thanks to Quinn selling the crystal, Fex was finally able to leave his home and enjoy the outside world. So far his experiences hadn't been great, but it was different, and he was slowly learning to enjoy it. It wasn't the same boring old routine he would practice in and out, and Fex wanted to thank Quinn for that in some way. While standing there and thinking about everything, Fex could see Quinn using his blood skills in the game. Not only that, but he was able to use them constantly without getting tired. What is that? Fex asked. This, Quinn replied. Quinn then explained how while in the lobby of the game, they were able to practice using their vampire skills without tiring out. But once they were in the game, then their normal body limits would be put on them as usual. Quinn didn't talk about the HP reducing not working while in the game, but since the system said only his vampire skills was linked to a system like a thing, he thought it would be hard to explain. After trying out a few skills here and there, Fex had a big grin on his face. He then started performing his martial arts while mixing in the blood skills here and there. The main skills he used were blood swipe and blood spray. But once in a while, he would use skills that Quinn had never seen before, such as the blood wall and a few others. Still, what had impressed Quinn the most while watching him practice was the martial arts he was using with his fists. They were fast and compact, and he could tell it defiantly increased the efficiency of something like blood spray. When Fex had stopped, he walked over to Quinn with a hop in his step. Hey man, this is great. I wonder why the vampires don't have a bunch of these in their buildings. It could really help the kids train. Although, I guess if they get too used to the game, then it wouldn't help them out that much in a real battle, but still this is great. While Fex was yammering away, he noticed that Quinn was staring at the blank empty space where Fex was standing. He started waving his hand in front of Quinn to see if he was still there. Hello, Fex said, still waving his hand. Oh sorry, Quinn replied. I was just looking at your martial arts. Oh yeah, that's right. You didn't learn any did you since you grew up here and everything. Fex then started to think if there was something he could do. Then something popped in his head, an idea. You know, I can teach you the martial arts if you want. Fex thought this was a great idea. He wanted to repay Quinn for getting him the beats crystal he needed, and this could be his way of returning the favor secretly. Really? Would that be okay? Quinn asked. Why not? You're a vampire, so you have the right to learn it. Fex then got into a fighting stance and tried to show all the motions to his attacks while explaining. So for the first step you want to look like this. Then you're going to feel a brew energy rise up. Next with your hands, you need to go pow pow pow. Fex said as he made every move. Did you get all that? Kinda. Quinn started copying what Fex had done, but it didn't seem to be working out at all, and even Fex realized this. I'm sorry, I guess I'm not really the teacher type. I'm not that good at explaining things. It's okay, Quinn replied, but Fex could tell Quinn was a little down when saying this. Then a lightning bolt idea had hit him. Hey, there is something I can do. Although I can't show you or teach you through words, I could move your body. What do you mean? Quinn asked. Do you remember what I did to your friend on the roof? Well, if you let me do the same to you, then I can show you how to use the martial arts. My string puppet is unique, so when you perform it, it will feel like I'm actually performing the skills through your body. Fex explained. Not only that, but it should allow you to memorize everything through your own body. In a way, this will be a shortcut, and you will learn it far quicker. What Fex was offering wasn't a bad proposal. The problem was whether or not Quinn could trust him with his body. Chapter 190, testing something new. You're worried, aren't you? Fex said. Judging by how long Quinn had remained silent, Fex could tell that he was deep in thought, deciding whether or not to trust him. And Fex really couldn't blame him. If he was in Quinn's situation, he would have done the same. Is there a risk to this? Quinn asked the system. After losing to Fex in battle so easily, and seeing him go toe-to-toe with Leo, he felt like learning the military martial art, and the vampires would put him at a big advantage. I think you should go for it, the system replied. In terms of other vampires, you're a bit weak and on the wimpy side. I think this would be major progress for you. I know that. Quinn snapped back a little annoyed at the system's words. He knew he was weak, but the system didn't have to remind him every time. I'm talking about him taking control of me. What happens if it becomes permanent? It won't be. Vampires can't have other vampires as their puppets permanently. It was why he was so interested in your friend. If you want to remove the strings, you can forcibly cut it. Though it may take some time depending on your strength, and it causes extreme pain. So there is the possibility he could use me to hurt those around me, even for a short period if he wanted to. That was when Quinn came up with an idea of his own. While in the normal gaming pods, both his and Fex's ability wasn't selectable. That was because these abilities seemed to be unique to vampires. However, it was different when using Logan's pod. With his pod, he was able to program and record abilities, and perhaps find a way so the two of them could link up and use their abilities together. Inside the game, there was no threat, no danger. Let me think about it for now, Quinn replied. Why don't I show you how to play first? Quinn then showed the basics of how to use the game's interface. He also explained the matchmaking system and the process to select an ability. Fex was pretty upset when he found out he wasn't able to use his strings ability in-game, but his mood quickly changed when he realized he was able to customize his in-game avatar according to his preferences. Fex designed his character in full black clothing. He looked like an ancient ninja with a face mask and hood, only allowing his eyes to be seen. He spent more time customizing his character than he did anything else, and he had already used his money card to buy a few extra items of clothing to get the full set. When comparing the avatars, Quinn's now looked incredibly plain, since he was only able to use the free items that were available to everyone. He could spend the money he had, but he still remembered how he was struggling even getting 10 credits not too long ago. Finally, it was time for them to search for opponents. While doing so, Quinn went for the quick selection option since he no longer gained EXP from low levels. The opponent would at least need to be at the level 3 mark for him to gain any EXP. A match had been confirmed and Fex was transported to the seating area in the arena. He could see Quinn standing on one end while his opponent stood on the other. His opponent was skinny, tall, and seemed to resemble a tree. What surprised him though was the fact that when he was sat in the seating area, he wasn't the only one watching Quinn's fight. Hey, you're new, Nate said, looking at Fex. What is all this? Fex asked, looking confused. Is everyone here to see the two of them fight? His opponent must be pretty special. He looked at the stand, noticing the crowd that had formed. There were 50 people in total, all dressed up in different avatars. Judging by what Quinn had said about the game, this was optional, meaning all the people that had appeared had chosen to do so of their own volition. Of course, it seems like Blood Evolver has gained quite a following, Nate replied. Since the last fight between Quinn and the level 4 user, people had become fans of him. They added him to his watch list, so they would be notified whenever the Blood Evolver was online. Originally, most of them were watching Quinn's matches for different reasons. He was known as a hacker, someone who was able to use abilities not programmed into the game. No one knew how he was able to do this. But, after witnessing his stellar performance from the previous match, they had quickly forgotten about everything else and solely wanted to watch all of the Blood Evolver's upcoming fights. Nate had watched all the fights of Quinn so far, so he recognized the regulars and the irregulars, which why he was able to spot Fex right away. So, are you implying that all these people are here to see the Blood Evolver? Fex asked. What makes him so special? Nate thought about that for a while, looking deep in thought. After some time had passed, he finally came up with an answer. At first, it was his skills that interested me, much like everyone else here. But, after that, I noticed something. Every time he came back to play the game, he would have grown in strength by leaps and bounds. And for some reason, watching someone grow from a small little fish into a fierce dragon is exciting for me. Nate explained, glancing at the match. Now let's see how much you've grown this time. The countdown for the match had begun, and it was time for the two of them to fight. Immediately, the tree-like student placed both of his hands on the ground. As he did, multiple thick tree roots started to form across the floor and spiraled their way towards Ray. The first thing he did was perform a blood swipe at the roots, hoping to cut them down. As the attack reached the roots, it caused the first set to break, but it would keep coming forward. Wind Walk activated. With his Tier 2 boots, he was able to outmaneuver the roots. Although there were many roots, and his blood swipes couldn't deal with all of them, he was able to outrun them with his speed. He circled around the attack and came to the student's side, preparing himself to try something he had been itching to try out since he had joined the game. The wood user, seeing this, immediately shot out a large trunk from the palm of his hand that came out straight and fast. Flash step. Performing the flash step, he avoided the attack and was now even closer to his opponent. Trees, protect me. The wood user shouted, and suddenly the user was surrounded by all sides with thick tree trunks. It was as if a forest had suddenly sprouted in the middle of the battlefield. This is perfect, Quinn thought. Right now he wanted to test out the idea he had, and the student had decided to become a still target. It was perfect for practice. Stopping in his tracks, he firmly planted both feet on the floor. Then, from his toes, moving up to his hip, he swung out his leg like a whip. While doing all these actions, he started to think back to the feeling of performing blood swipe in his hands, the rush of energy that flowed through his body as they left his fingers. While practicing his kicks in the weapons hall, he had pictured this movement several times, and right now was the first time he was actually combining the two together. The energy flowed from inside his body and was then released from his legs. A single large line of red energy left with it, shaped like the crescent moon. It was far larger than that of his regular blood swipe. As it hit the first set of tree trunks, it managed to slice through them with ease. The tree user ducked down in time, avoiding the attack from cutting his head off. But Quinn wasn't done yet. He hopped and changed his stance slightly, performing the same kick with his other leg, cutting the trees down from the other side. Both sides of the tree trunks shook due to the slightly angled cut and fell to the floor. The wood user was now panicking, but before he could even act, Quinn was already above him, performing the final axe kick, followed by a blood swipe. Level 4 opponent has been defeated. 10 EXP gained. 80 out of 100 experience points. Congratulations, a new skill has been created, Blood Crescent Kick. It seems like you have gotten stronger once again, Nate said. Chapter 191 Unique Skill. It had been a while since Quinn had last fought, and that was against Fex. Before that, it was against the one-scale Dowki. During both of these fights, he realized that he needed to get stronger. He knew he still had a long way to go, but with everything that was happening, he wasn't sure if he had gotten any stronger. He needed this fight to gauge just how much he had improved. Since the last time he played the game, he had gained a few extra stats, buffing up his body and his abilities. Even though he couldn't use his shadow skills in the game, he liked that it would force him to be creative in using his blood skills while fighting. All these things combined was what led him to coming up with a new skill in today's match. New skill, Blood Crescent Kick. A new skill, but how? Quinn thought. It was the first time a skill had popped up without him having leveled up. He also didn't increase any stats to get the skill either. Impressive. The system said. It seems like you managed to create a unique skill. This is a skill that you made all on your own, one that was not part of the system originally. By combining the martial art skills Leo had taught him with the blood swipe skill he had learned from the system, he had created a unique skill only he could use. Blood Crescent Kick. When using the skill while performing different types of kicks, a red line of blood aura in the shape of a crescent will be made. The attack carries a distance of 10 meters, but the aura will get smaller and weaker the further it travels. Cost, -2 HP for every kick. Compared to the blood swipe skill, the two attacks were quite different. Blood swipe released from Quinn's fingertips, forming a claw-like shape, and 5 small lines of red aura. He could also use blood swipe with both of his hands and bring the lines closer together to form a single stronger red line. However, this didn't seem to be as effective as 2 single blood swipes. The good thing about blood swipe was that because it had 5 separate lines, it covered a wider range, making it harder for a person to dodge, and they were more likely to use a block skill. While the Blood Crescent Kick was a single large line of red aura, it was sharper, faster, and also had longer range, but didn't have the same wide area of attack. There was also the fact that it cost 2 HP to use the kick instead of just 1 HP for a blood swipe. This didn't look like a lot at first, but Quinn knew that in a prolonged fight, like he had against the Dowki, it would soon add up fast. It was one of the main problems with combining blood spray into his punches. Fex, having witnessed the whole thing, was quite amazed. Did he come up with that skill himself? When did he have the time to learn it? I saw him learn the leg kicks at the same time as me. And how does he know how to use advanced skills like the flash step? Yet he doesn't even know the basic hand-to-hand combat of the vampires. As he was deep in thought, he heard a laugh by his side. It looks like another one has been converted into a fan, Nate said. You wouldn't believe it, but every time he fights he shows me something new. This kid is growing stronger fast. Every time. Fex replied. Are you sure he didn't just use these skills before? I'm positive, Nate replied. The first time we fought I beat him in such a way that made sure he showed me everything he had. But then I watched him fight against someone else, and he showed me a new skill. If he had used that in our fight, I don't know how it would have. Looking at him, now he's like an entirely different person from back then. If what Nate was saying was true, Quinn was getting stronger at an incredibly fast pace. One that hadn't been seen throughout the history of the vampires. Perhaps he is related to them. But I thought they all died out. If it's true, it would make sense why he has the shadow ability. Did they just move to Earth instead? Quinn then sent a message to Fex, saying he was free to play a few games of his own if he wanted to. Right now Quinn wanted to practice this move. Fex replied back, saying it was okay, and he would wait as he wished to watch Quinn fight a couple more times. Quinn went into his next match-making game again, and with it, the crowd had followed. At first, he found it strange, seeing the people watching him. Since he had never played the game before, he was wondering if it was normal for so many people to be spectating one person. Did they randomly stumble upon his match, or were they there because he had been on a winning streak for a while now, hoping he would eventually lose? However, Quinn didn't have time to worry about them, and really needed to worry about himself. The next game, he was placed with a level 2. Knowing he would get no experience in this match, he tried to finish it as quickly as possible, activating the wind walk skill in his boots to get in close, then using flash step and performing the regular hammer strike from behind. Hammer strike and blood hammer were still by far his 2 strongest attacks. For Fex though, it was the first time he had witnessed Quinn using them. He never used it against him in their fight, possible because Fex was too fast, because hammer strike took a brief moment to charge up. Against these weak people it was fine, but against someone as fast as Fex it would allow them to get in a free hit. So he does know the vampire martial arts. Fex thought. Arg. He screamed, as he felt like pulling out his hair. You know what? I'm gonna have to just stop guessing and find out myself. 2 more matches were made, and this time they were with another level 3 user and a level 4 user. These matches were closer and took more time, but they weren't as strong as they could have been. Rarely did Quinn get matched up with second years who seemed to have higher tier beast equipment. Quinn could only assume that the system had designed it this way on purpose, or just not many second years were playing the game. If there was one person who would know, it would be Logan. He made a mental note to ask him later. After winning the 2 matches, he had gained 20 more experience points and had decided to take a break. 100-400 CXP. Just as he was leaving the game, he had received a single message from Nate. I'll see you soon, and make sure you join the fighting event. Quinn had remembered Nate quite clearly. It was another loss that had stuck in his mind. And judging by this message, Quinn knew exactly what he was talking about. The upcoming military base event. Soon all the bases would meet up to compete in special events, each trying to show that they were able to raise the best and strongest students. Quinn was excited for once. Perhaps with this event, he would finally be able to show his strength. Chapter 192, A New Teacher. Inside the VR gaming room, one of the pod doors was abruptly opened, and out stepped a fairly domineering man with a burly build. His neck was nearly as wide as his square-shaped head, and for some reason, he also decided to frame his hair in a way that was similar to how his head was sculpted. However, after leaving the gaming pod, having had enough for the day, he was eager to get ready and start practicing for the upcoming event. A month left, huh? I just wonder how much stronger you can get in that meantime, Nate said with a smile on his face. A few seconds later, a hissing sound was heard from the pod next to his. As the pressure was slowly released from the sealed door, it started to lift up, and Nate saw a friendly face peeking in between the aperture. Hey, that guy really keeps getting better in every attempt, doesn't he? Sam said. I don't even know if I could beat him in a real battle the way he is now. You shouldn't talk down to yourself like that, Nate replied. Remember, he's only a first year, and there are 2 major differences between the first years and the second years. One is our equipment, Nate said, pointing to the cape that was on Sam's back. And the second one is our soul weapons. I don't know many first years who have been able to produce a soul weapon, and it's only something that they teach you in your second year. The 2 of them started to walk back to their dorm rooms. It was already evening and getting late, so it was nearly time for them to go to bed. Nevertheless, they were both excited about what they had just witnessed. Wait, if he's a first year, do you really think they will let him fight in the tournament? Sam asked. You saw his skills, right? At the rate that he is improving, even in a month's time, with or without a soul weapon, he should be able to match us. And that is a scary thought to have, but it makes my heart beat wildly at night. You're one strange dude, Sam said, looking at the creepy smile on the face of his companion. Well, you're right about that. With the reputation he already has in the game, I won't be surprised if he's treated like a king at his school. Sam replied. However, both of them were unaware of how truly wrong they were, for the school still did not know of Quinn's true strength, since he was still treated like level 1 trash. The 2 of them soon went to sleep, ending their eventful day. When the morning sun had risen, they began to do their normal routine. After eating breakfast, it was time for them to head to their homeroom class. As they entered the room, they felt the strange atmosphere that was hovering in the air. For one, the homeroom teacher hadn't arrived yet, and usually, the homeroom teacher would be there to welcome their arrival. The second thing that stood out was that the number of students that were gossiping away increased, and it seemed like the boys were far more excited about the topic of interest than the girls. As he sat on his seat, with Sam next to him, he turned towards his companion. What's going on? Nate asked. How the hell am I supposed to know? And you came into the room at the same time. I've been with you since yesterday, you big ox. Sam replied. As they both listened carefully to the students who were engaged in their own conversations, they managed to catch a few words. They eventually found out what all the commotion was about. Hey, did you see her? What? That new teacher? Yeah, she's so beautiful. I wonder how strong she is. Aren't all military tutor men quite strong? Most, but not all of them. She might just have a unique ability or was very knowledgeable in a club subject. Well, whatever class she's going to teach, I'm going to sign up for each and every one of them. It was clear from their dialogues that a new teacher was coming to school, and not just any teacher, but a true beauty at that. After hearing this news, Nate started to straighten his clothes and made sure that his hair was neatly tucked and sat up straight. What the hell are you doing? Sam said. Do you really think you're going to get on with the teacher? You haven't even managed to get together with any of the 20 girls you've confessed to since coming here. It will never happen with that big blockhead of yours. The vein on the side of Nate's head was now bulging, and his eyebrows were twitching. He proceeded to slowly turn his head, inch by inch, while holding in his anger. Hey, Sam, when was the last time that you and I had a sparring match? It's been a while, hasn't it? And I'm not talking about the game. I think it's better for both of us if we do it in person. It's going to be much more realistic, and you can feel every bit of pain. Nate replied, making sure to say the last words carefully to hammer them in Sam's head. All of a sudden, the sound of the classroom door sliding was heard. In an instant, as the presence entered the room, the surroundings assumed a silence that would enable them to truly appreciate what was coming into the room. Her skin was as white as the pure specks of snow. Although her features looked soft, no expression was plastered on her countenance. Still, the thing that stood out the most about her was her silver hair. She was wearing the black standard military uniform that they all had to wear. Sporting a hair, colored with the brilliance of silver jewelry and tied up with a single ponytail, with a length that managed to reach down to her waist, the professor sauntered to the center of the room. Hello, students. My name is Silver, and I will be your new homeroom teacher from now on. As she spoke, the expression on her face remained stiff and didn't seem to change one bit. Yet, The boys seemed to only find this feature of her even more attractive. An angel, Nate said. A true angel has descended among us mortals. Oh no, Sam said while shaking his head. What the hell happened to the boys these days? Silver started to scan the entirety of the gathering, looking at the students one by one, but it merely reminded her that she might have to stay in the school for a while. As the file said, it appears that Fex isn't really here. Silver had been tasked with the mission of finding and bringing Fex back to his family. However, with their family connections, the most they could do was get her a position as a teacher in one of the military bases. All she could do was rely on luck to see if she would be put at the same military base as Fex. Although, to her dismay, it appeared like she wasn't as lucky. While Fex was in military base 2, she had been transferred to work at military base 6. Without saying anything, she started to walk around the room and gaze at the faces of the students more closely. As she eyed one of the students, even the females had to recognize her ephemeral beauty and started to blush. She continued to stroll around, finally stopping in front of Nate and scrutinized his visage. Looks like this is going to be my day, Nate cheeringly told himself. She looked at him closer and said, why are you so interested in such ugly things? Although Sliver had no idea, she had said these words out loud. The whole room wanted to laugh, yet they did their best to hold it in out of respect for Nate. He wasn't like the other high-level users. He treated everyone in his classroom fairly, even though he was known as the strongest. As Silver walked off and headed back to the front of the class, she had one thought in her mind. Fex, I will complete my mission and bring you back, even if I have to hurt you, dear brother. Chapter 193, My Sandwich. It was an early morning for the students at Military Base 2, and although it wasn't time for the students to have breakfast yet, one was up and about before any other. Okay, just gotta make sure I have everything, Layla said as she slowly breathed in and out. In her hand, she held a white envelope. While holding it, a pair of disposable gloves had been worn as well. She had repeated these steps multiple times in her head and had done everything so the note couldn't be traced back to her. She felt around the envelope, making sure the nano stick was inside. Am I sure that I want to do this? Layla said, speaking to herself. Everything that I'm going to do is against the protocol, and if I get caught, I don't even think my mother can pull me out of this one. Right now, she stood outside the 3rd floor of the boys' dormitory area, also known as the VIP area for the male students. As she took a step forward, she quickly turned and started walking back, and then after 2 steps, she stopped again. I have to, if it wasn't for them. Quinn and everyone would have died back there, and if I don't, who knows what will happen to Quinn. She shook her head violently, and then once again headed back to the VIP area. Once she had entered, she made sure to check the halls. She also checked the other rooms and areas to see if anyone was out and about. Although it was early morning and most students wouldn't be up by now, she still needed to make sure. After placing the white envelope on the floor, just outside one of the doors, she stepped back towards the exit of the hallway right by the staircase. No turning back now. Using her ability, she pushed the envelope underneath the door and it was now on the other side. After that, she quickly ran down the stairs heading back to her room. So far, for everyone, it had been a normal day. They ate their morning food as usual and then went to their morning homeroom classes. It was now lunchtime, which was usually just before combat classes, and at that moment while Vorden, Quinn, and Peter were outside, Quinn had received a ping on his watch. Ding. A voice message. Quinn said, First, if you are listening to this message, make sure that no one not worthy of your trust is around you. I'll give you a few seconds to decide and do something about it before I will continue, Logan said. Quinn looked around, and the boys were outside on a bench. Vorden and Peter then huddled around Quinn to hear the message better, and also made sure no one came close, and if someone did, then they would quickly stop the message. Good. The message said as it continued to play. I received some interesting information, and it concerns Peter and your little problem. I suggest you gather everyone that knows about what Peter really is, and bring them to my room. Because we are going to need everyone's help on this to get out of this mess. Oh, and if you could bring me a sandwich from one of the vending machines, that would be good. You don't have to do this, of course, but it will do good for my brain power and help me think better. Although the tone of the message didn't sound very urgent, Quinn knew that if Logan was initiating contact with him and was asking to bring everyone into his room, it was a big deal. Logan didn't like people coming into his room in the first place, for he was afraid that people may steal his ideas for his new future inventions or even destroy whatever he was working on. So, Quinn knew that this was a big deal. You heard him, guys. You inform the girls and bring them to Logan's room, Quinn said, looking at Vorden. Peter, it might be best if you go with him. What are you going to do, sir? Peter asked. I need to get that sandwich, Quinn replied. The group had split up and Vorden and Peter went to get the 2 girls. However, Quinn didn't just do that so he could get a sandwich. He was actually going to look for Fex. With his nose, it wouldn't be difficult to find him, and he knew that if he informed Vorden about this, he would be against it. But if it was something to do with Peter, he was sure Fex would help out. The girls, along with Vorden and Peter, were patiently waiting inside Logan's room. The boys were quite calm, while Erin was tapping her foot away and about. Lately, she had been using all her spare time to practice her sword skills, yet she still could never achieve the same results as she did on the roof that day. Being here just seemed like a waste of her time. While Layla, who was standing next to her, felt a horrible, bubbly feeling in her stomach. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it was going to jump out of her throat. Can't you just tell us what is this all about? Erin said, annoyed. This is a very serious matter, Logan replied, sitting in his chair. He was currently playing with a trapezium-style Rubik's Cube made from metal. The inside used little small triggers to twist and turn the shape in all sorts of different directions. This made it multiple times harder than a standard Rubik's Cube. Each time he shifted one of the pieces, a large mechanical sound would be made. And I would hate to have to repeat myself again, Logan said as he continued to mess around. The room was silent, and the only thing that could be heard was the shifting sounds of Logan playing with the mechanical item. They waited and waited. Click, click. Will you put that damn cube away? Aaron shouted, before I shove it up your. Just then the sound of the door was heard. Looks like they are here, Logan said as he put the cube on the floor. Quinn entered first, and right behind him was Fex. As soon as Aaron saw this, she immediately stepped back. Quinn, what the hell is he doing here? Borden shouted. Wait, I was the one that asked him to come here, Quinn said. If it's something to do with Peter or the vampires, then he's going to be a big help. Remember he helped us out last time, and he has stayed true to his words every time. Look, I can tell I'm not wanted here. Fex said. If you really want me to go, I'll go. No, please stay, Logan said. Quinn is correct. This matter is very serious, and I do believe you will be a big help. Since Logan was the one who had said it and invited them here, the others felt like they at least needed to hear Logan out before they decided if he needed to be involved or not. All right, but before we begin, I believe, Quinn, you have something for me, Logan asked as he held out his hand. My sandwich. Oh. Quinn then threw the packaged sandwich over to Logan as a mechanical arm went into the air and grabbed it, unwrapping it for him and feeding him. They all sat there and watched Logan eat the sandwich, and when he was finally done, he turned to his computer. Let us begin. Chapter 194, The Truth About True Dream. As usual, when Logan was explaining things, he would display what he was looking at on his computer screen to the others through a hologram. As he went through files one by one, he would explain what they meant. When I woke up this morning, I was surprised to see an envelope on the floor, said Logan. I was afraid that it might be some type of a bomb or something. I had my mechanical spiders go ahead and pick it up, then inspect it. I scanned it for any traces of tampering and to see what was inside. To my surprise, there was a small little nano stick inside with a note. The screen had changed, and right now, a scanned version of the note was being displayed to the others. In this nano stick is some information on one of the Big Four family members, more specifically its leader known as True Dream. Our group has managed to gather extensive research into him, and here we can see all his wrongdoings in the past. The reason why I have passed this note on to you is that unfortunately for all of you, True Dream will be arriving in a few days' time. Out of everyone, I thought perhaps with your abilities you might be able to do something to stop this madness, for we do not wish anyone innocent to get hurt. At the end of the letter attached to the bottom was a stamp, and everyone in the room recognized it well. They had seen it many times on the television, and some of them had even written school reports about the group. It was the group known as Pure. So, what if True Dream is coming to the school? Aaron replied. He does a routine visit to most of the military bases anyway. I fail to see why this is our problem, and why we should even trust the words coming from a military group. I don't know, Layla said. Maybe they know something that we don't, and I'm guessing it has something to do with that stick. Although I would like to say congratulations, said Logan. I believe anyone would have been able to come to that conclusion. The files changed once again, and this time it contained reports of the previous visits that True Dream had done. It contained detailed reports of each visit to the military base, but not only that. It also informed them of what True Dream's true purpose for coming to the base. The fact that every time he visited, a select few students would be chosen, and soon after their abilities were gone. It also showed that there was a pattern to these things, and how he seemed to visit the second military base more often than the others. The expression on everyone's faces was sour as they read the reports. I can't say that it doesn't surprise me, Quinn replied. It's expected of this crappy system. I agree it's bad, Aaron said. But still I don't really see how this involves us. We're just students and they want us to stop this. He's from one of the Big Four families. That was when Vorden noticed something. Wait, did you say the visit was in a few days? Isn't that? Looks like we have a winner, Logan said. This is the reason why I called you all. I remember you telling me that for some reason Duke had deliberately wanted Peter to reach a level 4. It seemed strange, but why were they suddenly showing favoritism to Peter? And what's with the rush? Putting these two things together, it makes sense. Not only was Peter originally weak, but he also had no strong family backing. Sure, his family would be upset if he was to lose his powers or disappear, but no further steps would be taken, and everyone would soon forget just like the students before. Logan explained. And if they find out that Peter has no abilities anymore, they will start asking questions all over again, and it could lead them back to us, Vorden said. Not just the vampire stuff, but when they find out we were close to Peter, they might start looking into the deaths and more. The group had to take their time to take everything all in. Out of all of them, the first one to leave the room was Aaron. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but I'm not really that involved with you guys, Aaron said. I'm not a vampire, and I have no ties to what you did with the others. If I help out in this, it will only make me a bigger target. If you guys are caught trying to do anything, it could come back to me. I can't let that happen. As Aaron left the room, not a single person had gone out to chase her. She had a point. She really wasn't involved in any of this, and if she did help, it would only put her at risk. We have 2 days, Logan said. This Sunday, the students will be asked to gather in the assembly hall to welcome True Dream. Usually, the students are asked to stay back after the assembly. This is what is stated in the reports. They will then be taken somewhere, but where? Nobody knows. All that we know is that these students who are taken away lost their abilities. The world is given the explanation that they have been punished for doing something bad, so their ability got taken away, and some even disappear. So what plans do we have? The group then continued to discuss what could happen and came up with different plans and scenarios in case different things happened. Finally, after a long talk, they had come up with a plan that seemed to have a good chance of working. And it was like Logan had said, for this to work they would need everyone who was here to help. This included Fex, and surprisingly he had agreed, without saying too much. If he was discovered by his family now, he would get into too much trouble. But he knew that if the world discovered the existence of vampires, and it was because of him, it didn't matter who his father was, no one could save him. With the plan set, everyone left the room. For now, they would all act as normal for the next couple of days until True Dream arrived. When everyone had finally left the room, Logan turned towards his computer once more and started to play a video file. Logan was a very cautious person and was paranoid everyone was out there to steal his work. The school didn't allow any cameras, but that didn't mean he couldn't install any of his own. In the VIP area, Logan had set tiny miniature cameras that were close to invisible to the human eye. He installed them, not only on his front door, but also a few on the outside as well. After receiving the letter in the morning, naturally, the first thing he did was to check and see who had delivered the letter. As the video played, it was clear as day that Layla was the one who had delivered the letter. Layla, huh? It seems like this little group of yours, Quinn, all have their own tiny little secret. Although this one is not mine to tell. Chapter 195 and Illegal? After the meeting with Logan, the boys only had a little bit of time before lunch would end, and they needed to head to their combat classes. That's when Fex asked a question that seemed out of the blue for everyone present. So who is this True Dream guy? Is he a big deal? Fex asked. Everyone stopped for a moment and turned to look at Fex strangely. It was impossible for someone who lived on Earth to have never heard the Big Four family names. This fact had even shocked Quinn, and he started to think more and more that perhaps vampires were no longer on Earth. Whoa, what's with all the creepy stares? So I don't know one person. Is he really that big of a deal? Fex asked. Well, to be honest, I think Vorden would probably know more about him, Quinn replied. I only know the basics. At this point, everyone was all ears to hear what Vorden had to say. True Dream is different from the other big families, Vorden said. The families had their powers long before the world knew they even existed, slowly passing it down from family to family member. And to be honest, even within all the ability users, the three families always reigned on the top. The three? Quinn said. Yeah, this is what I mean when I say the True Dream family are a little different. For one, most of his family actually consist of multiple different ability users. This is due to the nature of his ability. The second thing is True Dream had discovered the ability himself later in life. We believe he is the first to have this power. His ability is unique, and we're not even sure if he can pass it on for others to learn or not. The military who are partners with him like to keep it this way. Remember, it's only because of him that so many of those in power chose to not disobey. Anyone who tries to fight back or rebel gets their powers taken away. There are even rumors it was because of True Dream that the pure faction had started in the first place. Once your ability gets taken away, there's no way for the body to learn another one, and for some reason, it seems like True Dream's ability stops you from completely producing any more mutant cells for your old ability. As you know, someone without an ability can't get very far in the outside world at the moment. It was true, currently, in the outside world, most of the things that couldn't be done with abilities were already automated with technology. Everyone then received a universal income, but it wasn't enough credits to live on Earth, causing most of the humans to relocate to shelters on other planets, some that were less protected than others. Although, even after Fex had heard Vorden's explanation, this True Dream person still didn't seem like a big deal to him. Even if Fex's ability did get taken away, there was nothing he could do about his vampire powers. Also, it seemed like True Dream himself was very weak, so he didn't understand the fear associated with his powers that the others had. After the boys finished talking, it was time for them to split up and head for their combat classes. Before doing so, Peter changed his number from an ability level of 2 to a 3. This way Bones could see he was progressing and report back to Duke. As usual, during the combat class, the group was going through their kicks once again. It was expected since the theme for the lesson would carry on for a week. Only this time Leo demonstrated how to block using your legs and counter certain moves using the palm of your hands instead. Fex and Quinn weren't really in the mood to practice all out. They were too busy thinking about the plan they had to initiate. So they were casually kicking and blocking each other's attacks at a normal speed. They had a lot on their minds as the plan wasn't perfect. It couldn't be perfect because they didn't know what True Dream was going to do. So the only thing they could try was improvising and plotting around a few things they didn't know what was going to happen. In the middle of their practice, Fex asked Quinn a question. Hey, that ghoul, he evolved, right? So I'm guessing you sorted everything out. Do you know what he evolved into? You mean you can't tell? Quinn replied as he palmed away a kick. I can tell he smells different from before, but I don't think I've smelled his type. So what is he? He's something called a white. When Quinn spoke those words, Fex had suddenly stopped kicking. Seriously, what a rare evolution. He must be quite powerful then, maybe even stronger than me in terms of physical abilities. What makes you say that? Quinn asked. Well, a white's strength is mirrored by his creator's strength, and his creator has to be a leader, Fex explained. Which makes me think why he even left the ghoul in the first place, or why he hasn't come back to pick it up. Well, it doesn't have to be a leader, right? Quinn said, nervously hoping to throw Fex of this dangerous trail. Any vampire can turn someone? Quinn had made sure to check this fact with the system beforehand, and it was true that most vampires could turn someone. However, depending on their power, it limited how many people they could turn. At most, a regular vampire could only turn one person. Are you serious? Did they really teach you nothing here? Fex said as he let out a sigh. Although it's true that a vampire can turn anyone, it is against the laws. The only person who has permission to turn someone is the leader of one of the 13 families. If anyone else was to turn someone, that would be classified as an illegal. The vampire, and whoever created it, would be taken back to be executed. Quinn gulped at hearing this piece of information. Is this what the system meant when they said they would now be coming after him? Was Quinn and Peter both considered illegal in the eyes of the vampire families? After all, Quinn was an unusual vampire, as the system had stated. As he was busy thinking and taking it all in, the system had interrupted. Don't worry, you are not illegal, the system said. However, I didn't want to tell you this so soon, for you still are not strong enough and don't have the classifications of one. But ever since you turned Peter and created your own family name, you too are now a vampire leader. But as I stated before, if you want to live, never reveal this information to anyone. Although Fex didn't say anything else, he had kept a few things to himself. Whites were known to only follow one person, otherwise, their natural nature would take over and they would go on a rampage. Many of them had to be destroyed once their masters had been slain, otherwise, they would attack everyone in sight. The fact that Peter hadn't done that meant whoever had turned him was still close by. Fex was no fool. Judging by the frightened look on Quinn's face, he could only assume Peter was created by him, and perhaps Quinn's leader wasn't aware of this certain event. Fex didn't know how close to the truth he was, and how far away he was at the same time. Chapter 196, The 13 Families. A whole load of information had just been given to Quinn at once. He felt like it was pretty relevant to the situation he was in, and it would have been nice if he had at least hinted about it beforehand. The way the AI acted with the system was really starting to bug Quinn. The lesson was coming to its end, so Leo decided to round up everyone to give a few pointers. This was Quinn's chance to ask the system the questions he needed. Look, I don't understand anything, Quinn said. I understand, maybe you didn't want to tell me before. The less I know about it, the better, hoping I wouldn't get too involved, but right now, Fex is here, and if I make a mistake and slip up, he will easily be able to tell. I'm sorry, Quinn. The system replied. I want to tell you, but sometimes I can't. When the creator created me, he chose to make it so certain information was revealed only when necessary. There are things I wish to tell you, but cannot. Then what can you tell me? Earlier Fex mentioned there being family leaders, and then you mentioned that I was one as well. What does he mean by that? The vampires are controlled by a council. The council is split up into 13 different leaders and a vampire king or queen. These are also what are known as families. When you created Peter and made your family name, you automatically became a member of the council. Quinn couldn't believe what he was hearing. Just a second ago, he didn't even know a vampire council existed, and now apparently, he held a high position of power. But then, why would they be after me then? Quinn asked. And wouldn't this mean I would be safe if they found out about Peter? Quinn, the vampire race like to seem like they are working together, but they are just as cruel and power-hungry as humans. When the vampire king or queen decides to go into eternal slumber, then a new king shall be selected from one of the 13 leaders. While the current king or queen is still present, they must do as they say, but once they disappear, it will turn into a cruel battleground. You are only a leader in name only. A shortcut was created due to the system. A lowly vampire like you is too weak. To become a vampire leader, one at least must have the rank of a vampire lord. Although this isn't the only reason why they will be after you, unfortunately, I can't say anymore. The vampire leaders were at the rank of a vampire lord, but Quinn had never met a leader before, so he had no reference for their strength. The only other vampire he had met was Fex. What about Fex? Do you know what rank he is at? Quinn asked. Fex is on the cusp. He is not quite at the next evolution stage, which would be a vampire noble, but he is stronger than most vampires out there. The ranks are as follows. You have a vampire, vampire noble, vampire knight, vampire lord, and finally, the vampire king or queen. There are also the subclasses such as Peter within these ranks, but they can never rise above their leaders or creators. Quinn was hoping to hear that Fex was quite a high-ranking vampire, perhaps even one just below the vampire lord. Instead, he just managed to get confirmation that there were a few more classes even above Fex. It was as the system said. For whatever reason that the system wouldn't tell him if they were to learn he was a vampire leader, they would try to kill him. And with his strength right now, he wouldn't even last a second. These families, why are there 13 of them? Couldn't all the vampires just unite under one banner? The humans and vampires share more than they would like to think. Just how humans were selfish and decided to keep their abilities to themselves, it is the same for the vampires. Each vampire has a basic set of skills. However, the 13 different families are each divided into the different abilities they have. This does not mean they are all related by blood, however. Before learning an ability, a vampire must go through a blood ritual with that family, meaning they can never go against them. Only then will they teach that vampire their ability. An example of this is the Sanguinis family that Fex is a part of, who have the ability to control string. Still, this does not mean a vampire cannot learn an ability outside of the 13, but if they chose to do this, they will never be promoted within the ranks of the family they have chosen to follow. This information disappointed Quinn a little. He was hoping at some point he would be able to find an ability for Peter to use, but it seemed like each family kept a lock on their abilities, not allowing outsiders to learn them. And what were the chances Quinn would be able to stumble upon another book that vampires were able to learn? Thinking about this caused another question to pop into his head. Wait, Quinn said, does that mean my ability belongs to one of the 13? Is that why they're trying to kill me? Your shadow ability is not part of the 13 families. The system replied. This was the first bit of good news, Quinn thought. If his ability wasn't part of the 13 families, even if he used it, the vampires wouldn't know he was a vampire and they could think he was just another ability user. But I warn you to not use your ability in front of others. The only thing I can say for now is your ability carries history for the vampires that they wish to forget. They would only target you more. Doesn't that mean Fex is targeting me then? Said Quinn. I believe he may be too young to know about what happened in the past. They most likely do not teach the young ones about this either. This is all you need to know about this matter. Only when you are strong enough, Quinn, I promise I can tell you then. This whole vampire business seemed like it was more trouble than it was worth at the moment. Just when Quinn thought he could finally stop hiding his strength, it seemed like he needed to hide it even more. Right now, though, he would have to deal with one problem at a time, and the immediate problem in front of him was Peter and Duke. Over at the elemental training hall, they too were doing the same lessons as usual, and as lessons were about to finish, they had free time to do what they wanted, and once again Bones had come over with his 2 men and confronted Peter. Peter, Bones shouted. Well, will you look at that? You finally managed to reach level 3. It looks like you're going to make it to level 4 in time after all. What do you say to one more sparring match before tomorrow, huh? Bones was frustrated after taking a beating from Vorden last time, and he himself was a level 4 user, while Peter was still a level 3, and a new one at that. Bones was confident he could still beat him. Even if he had the potential to be as strong as him with his earth powers, he couldn't have learned that many skills with the ability in such a short amount of time. Peter turned around and took one look at Bones. You're too weak for me. PSS off before I kill you. Chapter 197 Troublemaker. Vorden was standing by the side of the group and was glancing over as usual. He currently had the level 4 earth ability copied, just like last time in case this situation was to repeat himself. Those guys, I guess they didn't learn from last time. Maybe I've gotten softer hanging around with Quinn all the time. Vorden thought. But as he was thinking that, he heard Peter's voice. You're too weak for me. PSS off before I kill you, Peter said, and this time there wasn't a hint of fear in his voice. Vorden couldn't reveal he was involved with Peter, so he couldn't step in, and waiting was all he could do for now. He watched carefully, preparing himself for the worst, standing in a fighting stance just to the side of the group. What the heck? Bones said. Oh, I get it now. You think because you got a little bit of power, and now a level 3 you're a big shot. How well think Aga? Before Bones could even finish what he was saying, Peter's hands had gripped and wrapped around Bones' mouth, his fingers placed at the side of his jaw. Did I not tell you to go away? Bones immediately retaliated by lifting his hands, trying to create a pillar of earth from below Peter's feet. As soon as Peter had felt the slightest bit of vibration from below, he knew what was coming. But he didn't move. He waited for the pillar to rise up while continuing to hold on to Bones. Then at the last second, as the pillar rose up from below, Peter stepped back and pulled Bones into his own pillar, allowing it to hit him right in the chin. Bones, one of his friends shouted as they came running forward. Then suddenly out of nowhere a large wall of earth had come between the two groups, and at the same time Bones had been blocked off from Peter's view. Now standing by Peter's side was Vorden. Ignore them. We have to get out of here. Now just run. But Peter remained still as if he wanted to continue fighting against them. Look, just ignore them. They're trash, right? They're not worth our time, Vorden argued. Huh, you're right about that, Peter said as he took off with Vorden out of the training center. As Vorden and Peter were outside, Vorden decided it was best if they headed back to the dorm room for now and stayed there. While heading back, he started to think about the confrontation. It had shown Vorden how much Peter had changed. Seeing how he acted against Bones, he couldn't imagine what Peter might do if he was to be put in a room with True Dream or Duke. Inside the dorm room, Vorden and Peter hadn't said much. They no longer were as close as before when Vorden used to mentor Peter. In fact, when Vorden looked at Peter now, he no longer would see the same Peter. He just got this weird feeling, and he found it strange that Peter would often just remain still in one place for long periods of time. Coming from Vorden, that said a lot to how much Peter really had changed. Finally, Quinn had returned from his class, and the first thing Vorden did was ask if the two of them could speak alone in private. Sorry about this, Peter, do you mind? Quinn asked. If that is what you wish, sir, Peter said as he went back to sit down in his seat. The two of them decided to take a walk down the hallway until they had reached a window. Making sure there wasn't anyone who could be listening in to their conversation, they looked outside, allowing the breeze to touch their face as they talked. Vorden had explained what had happened today in the training hall, and he also told him his worries about Sunday when he was to meet True Dream. I feel like you want to suggest something to me, Quinn said. I know I have mentioned it before, said Vorden, but last time I said it half-heartedly, but this time, Quinn, I'm serious. I think we should cut our ties with Peter. Although Vorden had sugar-coated his words, Quinn knew what he was getting at. They should kill Peter. Honestly, with everything going on, Quinn couldn't say he hadn't had the same thoughts. Lately, the thought was entering his head more often. This Peter wasn't the same one he knew. It was clear the old Peter was already gone. Trying to go through with this plan, I think is riskier than getting rid of Peter, Vorden said. I think we can do Peter justice when we leave school in 2 years. We'll look after his family. We can make our own faction, and the money we earn from being travelers, we will send them a portion each month. Vorden was making a good case, but Quinn wondered how Peter's family would feel after finding out their son had died or disappeared. Would they really care if they had money or not? Even if Peter wasn't the same as before, he was still him, right? There had to be still a little of him inside there somewhere. I for one don't think this is a good idea, the system said. First, you yourself will be unable to kill Peter even if you decide to go through with this. You would have to stand by as you watch someone you know kill Peter, and Although he is loyal to you, he would not just stand there without putting up a fight. The second thing goes to the matter we spoke of before. You were lucky Peter turned into a white. It is quite a powerful ally to have. Right now you need to gather and keep all the power you can get. It's not a question of if the vampires will come, Quinn, it's when. Suddenly, as these thoughts filled Quinn's mind, a strange feeling came over him once again. It was the family connection from the blood ritual. I can't do it, Vorden, Quinn said. He's family now, and so are you and the others. Quinn didn't know this, but as he turned and said these words to Vorden, his eyes were lit up bright red. Vorden assumed that perhaps this matter went far beyond just the conversation they had now, and had something to do with Quinn himself. All right, Quinn, we'll stick with the plan. The next day it was the weekend, so the group had no classes for the day. However, they were unable to spend their time as freely as the other students could. Instead, they met in Logan's room once more. Each of them went over the details of their plan, while Logan also handed each a strange round circular pin to be put on their clothes. It looked similar to a button and blended well into their uniform. There was also a spare circular small speaker that was to be placed in the ear. These two items were a set that was to be used to communicate with each other. The only person who didn't receive one was Peter, as they knew he would be taken away. However, a microphone was once again installed into his watch so they could hear everything that was happening. After a good night's rest, it was finally Sunday, the day True Dream would finally arrive at the school. Chapter 198 Jack, True Dream arrives. It was now Sunday morning, and the 8 sergeants had all gathered inside the portal hall. 4 of the second-year sergeants stood on one side and 4 of the first-year sergeants stood on the opposite side, forming 2 lines in front of the portal. Each of them had straightened postures and were unmovable, assuming their best attitude before the single portal. The said portal had been pulled out and placed in the center of the room. Although the color of this portal was neither green, orange, nor red, it was hued in the purity of white, making it look like a blank canvas. Just like the traveling stations, the white color indicated that the destination of the portal was Earth. The doors to the training hall soon opened, and every one of the sergeants immediately gave a salute to the 4 men who had entered the room. Duke, the head of the second-year students, Nathan, the head of the first-year students, and Mike stood in the center. Out of all the generals there, Mike was the oldest and was well respected. Even though he didn't hold the highest rank, he was still in charge of the communications that would transpire in between military bases. Then, finally, standing behind the 3 of them was a man in a black and white tailored suit. The others had never seen him wear anything else other than that. It was the head General Paul. Duke, I hope you already have everything prepared, yes? Paul asked. Yes, everything is proceeding well, and we should reach the quota as usual. All the students will gather in the assembly hall this afternoon. We shall advance with everything else right after. Duke replied. Good, said Paul, looking at another comrade next. Mike, how are the preparations for the upcoming event going? Not to worry, we still have a leeway of a month before the event. Students will be able to choose which events they want to participate in soon. I'm sure that we'll come out on top this year, I know we will. Mike said as he laughed loudly. Nathan, I'm afraid I have some bad news for you, said Paul. The upcoming portal outing for the first-year students, it will not be a green portal like how we originally planned it, but it will be an orange portal instead. Hearing this, Nathan's eyes widened. Sir, this is crazy. They're only first-year students. Why do we need to push them so fast? There are reports that the Dalki are becoming more aggressive with their exploration. We must compete with them. This order has been made by all of us, so we must push more, and at the same time, we cannot willingly lose our regular men. Earth is the #1 priority, and we must protect it at all cost. So they chose to sacrifice the children instead. Nathan complained back, utterly distraught by the news. War will soon be waged, and the Dalki do not discriminate, whether they are children or not. Age will not matter to them when that time comes. It's better that they get the experience now. I will give you permission to send a couple of sergeants with them for their safeguarding rather than the regular teachers, but that's it. This is an order, and it's final. I don't want to welcome any opposition. Usually, green portals would be used for first years. They were the safest, containing basic and intermediate beasts. Once the student reached the second-year stage, they would then, though only once, go out on an orange portal expedition. Orange portals posed a heightened risk. There were shelters on the planet, but the whole planet had yet to be explored. The moment that the military arrived on that planet, the goal would be to expand and explore the areas of the planet that had yet to be explored. If they were lucky and finished their exploration, it would get the go-ahead, and the portal color would change to green. If they discovered high-level beasts, then the portal would retain its orange color. Nathan felt like the first years were way too inexperienced to do such a task. The main difference when traveling to an orange portal planet was that they would travel as a single unit instead of in teams. Furthermore, the school had yet to enlighten the students about the importance of working together. The generals now stood a few feet away from the circular teleporter. Paul lifted his wrist to look at his watch. Checking the time, it was currently 8:59. 9 o'clock. As soon as the watch displayed 9 o'clock, the portal started to warp slightly, and 3 figures could be seen coming through. Standing in the center was a bald-headed man who wore sunglasses, and he had also donned a suit. Jack, greeted Paul. It's been a while, he said as he went to the others and gave them a hug. That's him, Faye whispered to Haley, who was standing next to her. I can't believe that 2 of the strongest people on our planet look like shady businessmen. Although Jack True Dream didn't look impressive by himself, the 2 men who came out of the portal beside him did. One of them was a large fellow whose height was nearly 7 feet. He was completely covered in a gray-colored beast equipment, which looked similar to a rhino, while he carried a large two-handed axe on his back. By his side was an individual who was the complete opposite, a small skinny fellow. This person was wearing beast equipment that was dark green in hue and had a mask covering his face. Although, instead of a heavy armor like the other person, he wore light armor. However, just from gazing at both of their equipment, Faye could tell that they were high-level beast gear, way beyond that of the advanced tier. Jack truly had brought his strongest guards along. It reminded Faye that even though they were allies, still, at the same time, they weren't. The fact that Jack felt the need to bring these two was to remind them of the power that his family had. Right now, there was an odd balance between the ability users in the world that caused small-scaled skirmishes to happen. The military's strongest force was the 8 head generals that were in charge of each of the military bases. The leader of this group was the head general in Military Base 1. In addition to them was the Big Four from the 4 families. They were the current decision-makers in the affairs concerning the world, and whenever there was a serious matter to be decided, a meeting would be called in their midst. Once in a while, though, the families or the military would have to show their strength just to make sure that the others wouldn't get the idea of rebelling. How about some breakfast together? My chiefs have prepared a great meal. Paul asked. No thanks. I ate before I came here, Jack replied. I was actually hoping to speak to your sergeants who discovered one of our family members. I believe that when his body was discovered, it was found along with 2 other students. Is that correct? I wish to investigate this matter before I do anything else. If you don't mind, that is. Oh, honestly, I'm not sure of the details myself, Paul replied. I surmised that Haley was the one who wrote the report and sent it off to you. Haley, Paul called her, and she immediately rushed over, giving a salute to both Paul and Jack. Please, if you can, help Jack in any way possible. Of course, sir, Haley replied. This was the real reason why Jack had decided to visit the military base. His original plan was to visit the particular place later. However, when he learned that one of his men had died in the same way as one of his previous guys, he felt the need to investigate. Perhaps, whatever had killed Ian was the same thing that killed one of his top men. He was hoping that he could find answers from the 2 students who were found with the body at the time. Chapter 199 The One Rule. Right now both Jack and Haley were both inside the medical office. Haley was sitting down at her computer while Jack was standing just above her shoulder taking a peek at the screen. Is this the report you wanted? Haley asked as she brought up the file. Jack gave it a quick read over, and it was the same report that he had received from her before. When you recovered his body, other than the 2 boys that were with him in the place, was there anyone else or anything inside? Jack asked. Nothing that I can remember. Although now that you mention it, it did seem a little strange. Haley said. What do you mean? Well, even though everything was supposedly destroyed, the whole training center was left untouched due to it being made of glathrium. It looks like not a single beast had managed to get inside the place. Yet, when we entered, it seemed like the whole place had been trashed, as if a huge brawl had taken place. Do you remember any other details? Jack asked. Haley then went into detail describing what the scene looked like, how there were several mangled doors, and how chairs from the arena were all over the place and crumbled up. She then also went into detail about True Dream's body when they recovered it. The bottom half was still intact, while the top half had the same 2 bite marks on it. She also did a quick on-the-spot evaluation and found that the body seemed to have died not too long ago. It sounds like Ian must have had fought something while he was in there. Jack said. Ian's ability was magnetism. Judging by the scene you were describing, whatever he was fighting with at the time managed to kill him. Do you have the name of the 2 boys? If they were there, then they must have at least saw something. Although Haley felt the same way, the boys had already been interrogated several times over the event. Right now, Haley felt like the most possible thing was a beast. Something might have attached themselves to one of the students and got onto their scent. It followed behind them, killing people in the process and causing small puncture wounds on their neck. This was the only logical conclusion she could come to. Still, she didn't want to inform Jack of all the previous investigations they had already done. He was in a way higher position than her. She had also heard rumors of his bad side. At first, Jack was apparently a pleasant person. He thanked the military for helping and taking him in, promising to always help them out. But as he got better abilities and more people on his side, the demands he started making were ridiculous. Nowadays, if he didn't get his way, there was no telling what would happen. The 2 students' files were brought up. The first one was Quinn. Jack quickly scanned it over. But as soon as he saw he was only a level 1 ability user, he quickly disregarded it. The next person, though, was Vorden, who interested him. On his file, it stated his initial testing was a level 5, but next to it in brackets, they said it was subject to changes, and it was also stated that he was an original. The school already knew Vorden's power due to the information passed on to the previous school, but just for filing's sake, they took down his initial score. As Jack was reading through the file, that's when he spotted the name. Vordenblade. After reading this name out loud, a memory had popped into his head. Several years ago, Jack had had his power for a few years now, and his family members were starting to grow. He had been called in for a meeting. This meeting was between the big 3 powers, the strongest originals. He was invited to a private island where a large mansion sat on the highest point. He remembered each of their presence that day as they sat on a round table opposite to each other. The pressure coming of each of them was immense. After all, they were the strongest people in the world. They didn't rule it by political gains or winning the people's hearts like in the past. Instead, they ruled it through their own power and an iron fist, and just looking at them he could see that. There was no military there, no government. There was just the 3 leaders of the family and himself. They didn't need any guards with them. What was the point when they were stronger than any guards they could hire? The meeting had come as a surprise because the reason he was called was because they wanted him to have a seat at the leaders' table. The leaders' table consisted of the 8 head generals and currently the heads of the 3 big families. They had acknowledged the strength of Jack and his family had at that time. And on that day, it went from the big 3 to the big 4. However, one thing had stuck in his mind. There was one rule they stated before he left: to never touch the Blade family. At first, Jack thought it was a joke as he started to laugh. He had heard of every single one of them out there. He even knew several other big-name original families out there in the real world, but he had yet to have heard of this Blade family before. But soon after he realized that each of them were dead serious, the pressure they were emitting just seconds ago seemed to completely vanish at the mention of this family name. "Can you tell me why?" Jack asked. "If you ever meet one of them, you have 2 choices." One of the men said, "Stay away, or help them. But if you go against them, not even we can help you." At the time, he was truly frightened. Looking at the report once again, he looked at the name carefully. Could this really be related to the same family they were talking about? Jack thought, would they really care if I got rid of one kid, or maybe they were behind the deaths of my men in the first place? He started to think about what to do and decided to go confront Vorden. However, every time he felt like he was about to do this, images popped back up in his head of the strong men on the table that day. Just what had gotten them so worked up. "Perhaps it's best if I just leave it alone for now," Jack said. "I could always get some more men." A few hours had passed and lunch break had just passed. Although it was a Sunday, all the students had been told to gather in the assembly hall for a special occasion, while the others were wondering what it was exited and chattering away. Quinn and his group had stomach pains, and their blood was pumping widely around their body. They knew exactly why they had all been called. A part of them didn't want the letter to be true, but they could no longer escape reality. Standing inside the assembly hall was all the first-year students and the second-year students. In total in the assembly hall stood around 1,000 students. All of them stood nice and straight, staring in the direction of the stage. Right now, standing up on the stage was Duke, and behind him were the 2 men who had arrived with Jack. "All right, is everyone ready?" Logan asked. Right now, Logan had a small earpiece that acted as a microphone, while the others apart from Peter had the same. It was time for them to put their plan into action. "Ready," they all replied. Chapter 200, the selected A. The assembly hall was split into 2 equal halves, with all the first-year students standing on the left of the stage, and the second-year students standing right of the stage. The fact that all the students in the school were told to gather together, and not just a single year told them it would be a big event. Then the 2 sections on each side would be further split up. They were grouped by each homeroom class, which contained about 50 students. Quinn and Vorden were standing relatively close to each other, while Peter was standing a row in front of them, so they could keep an eye on him, while the girls stood directly at the front of the class. Their section was stationed closest to the stage, while right at the back towards the exit was Logan. To his surprise, it seemed like Fex was in the same homeroom class as him. Logan didn't turn up to homeroom class much, and if it was anyone else they would have been punished for this. But because Logan was a VIP student from a rich family, he obtained special privileges. Duke was currently standing on stage giving the students a speech, telling them about all the achievements that the base had made so far, and what the upcoming schedule for the first-year and second-year students would look for the rest of the year. While listening to this, Vorden was preparing himself, or more specifically, he was preparing someone else. "Ratten, you remember the plan, right?" Vorden asked. "As soon as you finish with what needs to be done, then you get out of there. I don't care if someone looks interesting to fight, or if someone looked at you the wrong way. We need to disappear immediately after you are done." "Will you shut up?" Ratten snapped back. "For the last 2 days, you've said the same thing over and over to me. I know that if I don't do what you said, I won't hear the end of it." Vorden hated the fact that the plan required him to use Ratten. If he could, he would have used himself, but the task that was given to him relied on him having 2 abilities, and Vorden could only control one. But of course, using Syl was out of the question, so that left him with Ratten. The 2 abilities he needed were already stored for the day. Right now, they just needed for the assembly to be over. Quinn, on the other hand, was worried for Peter. The system recommended giving Peter some of his blood, which he did, and he gave the order not to attack Duke or Jack. With the extra blood, it made Peter more loyal to the point he would obey every order. Loyalty to one's master was also distance-based. The further away, the less influence the master's orders had. But with fresh blood from Quinn in his system, he would have no option but to obey the commands he was given. Eventually, the power would fade away, but for a short time period like this one, it would be enough. The only way that Peter could disobey this order is if his life was put on the line. Then self-preservation would override Quinn's orders. Other than an update about the schedule for you all, we also have a special guest here today. He visited us last year, and he is here to visit us again. Duke pointed at one of the men who sat at the leader's table, and was actually the leader of one of the big 4. "Please clap for Mr. Truedream," Duke said as he walked off the stage. Mr. Truedream then got up from his seat at the table and come up from the side of the stage, and as he stepped forward, so did the 2 guards next to him. The students looked up and stared at them in awe. They had never seen such impressive beast gear in their life, and couldn't imagine just how much it would cost to own them. Knowing that they were from the Truedream family, they would also have some impressive abilities. However, as most of the students looked at Mr. Truedream, they were quite disappointed. He wasn't wearing any beast gear, and he didn't give off the same presence as other leaders they had seen. However, there were a few in the room who felt differently. They could feel a confidence exuding from his body, and one of these students was Fex. As he was looking at him, he was starting to sweat. The sight of Mr. Truedream reminded him of the 13 vampire leaders. This was the presence of someone who was on top of the world. Many of you should know who I am, but just in case, my name is Jack Truedream, leader of the Truedream family, and also the owner of Dreamland City. I have a close relationship with the military, and I visit every base each year. But I have to say, out of all the military bases, this is my favorite one. I also seem to get the most and the best gifts delivered directly to my footstep here. Jack said with a smile. Did you hear that? He said we're the best military base out there. A student whispered. Are you an idiot? He probably says that to all of the military bases he goes to. Another student responded. True, but still if we could get into his faction, we would be set for life. I hear he even provides free housing for all those in his city. As long as you join their team, of course, the first student replied. While the other students were excited to see Truedream, Quinn's group could see the other hidden message behind his words. Most likely those gifts he was talking about were the students given to him right after this assembly. He was declaring it in the open, while no one knew what was happening. While the speech continued on, from the bottom of Logan's sleeve one of the small mechanical spiders crawled down his shirt and hopped off his shoe. It was the same size as a regular small spider and made next to no noise as it moved about. It continued to crawl across the floor until it had eventually reached the stage. All right guys, it's all set, Logan whispered. Jack then spoke his final words. In a month's time, I will be coming to watch all of you at the inter-military base event. Perform well, and those that impress me will be given an extended invitation. With that, the speech was over, and Jack walked off stage with his 2 guards behind him, heading off to a location out of sight from all the students. While doing this, the mechanical spider quickly followed along. As Jack left the stage, Duke returned. He had one last thing to say to everyone. You heard the man. Work hard so you can achieve a great future for yourselves. I expect our school to come out on top at the inter-military base event. Before I dismiss you all to enjoy the rest of your day off, I would like these 8 students to stay behind. Ray Dem, Howard Hubby, Wilfred Green, Sarah Beeswax, Michael Briscoe, Amy Yellup, Peter Chuck. After hearing Peter's name, everyone's stomach sunk a little. This was it. They needed to get into action right after he called out the final name. And finally Aaron Haley. These students please stay behind and come to the front of the stage. The rest of you may leave.